You know that moment when your entire world shatters? Not the kind of breaking that happens all at once, like a window hit by a stone, but the slow-motion kind where you watch each crack spread across the surface of your life, and you're powerless to stop it. When everything you believed was solid and real and permanent turns out to be nothing more than a beautiful lie wrapped in expensive paper and tied with silk ribbons. I never thought it would happen to me. Never thought I'd be that woman, the one who finds out her perfect life was an illusion. But here I am, and let me tell you, falling from the top of the world hurts worse than you can possibly imagine. My name is Alina, and for 12 years I was Mrs. Alina Hartwell. Notice I said was, past tense, because the woman who walked down that aisle in a $20,000 dress, who said I do under an arch of white roses, who believed with her whole heart that love conquers all, that woman doesn't exist anymore. She died on a Tuesday afternoon in a shopping mall food court, killed by the sight of her grandmother's sapphire necklace hanging around a stranger's neck. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to when I still believed, back to when I thought I had it all figured out, back to the days when I was living what everyone on the outside called the perfect life. Picture this, a mansion in the Hollywood Hills with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook Los Angeles like we own the entire glittering city below. And maybe we did, in a way. My husband Marcus owned half the real estate in 3 counties. Our house wasn't just big, it was architectural. The kind of place that gets featured in magazines with titles like Modern Luxury Living and Estates of the Rich and Influential. 8 bedrooms, 10 bathrooms, a pool that looked like it belonged at a resort, a wine cellar that held bottles worth more than cars, a garage with 6 vehicles that together cost over $1 million. My closet, and I'm not exaggerating, was the size of most people's entire bedrooms. Walk-in doesn't begin to describe it. It was a whole room, with custom built-in shelving, special lighting, a full-length 3-way mirror, and enough designer clothes to stock a boutique. Dresses I'd worn once to charity galas and never touched again. Shoes with red soles that cost $1,000 a pair. Handbags that had waiting lists. I had things I'd forgotten I owned. That's how much stuff filled that space. And the jewelry. God, the jewelry. I kept it in a wall safe hidden behind a rack of designer heels I never wore because they hurt my feet but were too beautiful to get rid of. That safe held pieces that would make your jaw drop. Diamond necklaces, emerald earrings, ruby bracelets, sapphire rings. Some of them gifts from Marcus, bought from exclusive jewelers and prestigious auction houses. Each piece came with certificates of authenticity and detailed provenance. But the most valuable pieces, at least to me, weren't the ones Marcus bought. They were the ones I'd inherited. Family heirlooms passed down through generations of women who'd survived wars and depressions and heartbreaks I couldn't even imagine. From the outside, I had everything. I was the woman other women looked at with envy at charity events. The one with the handsome, successful husband who'd made his first million before 30 and hadn't stopped since. The one who wore the right clothes, said the right things, showed up in the society pages smiling next to my powerful husband. I was living the dream, right? The fairy tale, the happily ever after. Except fairy tales don't tell you what happens after the wedding. They don't tell you that Prince Charming can turn cold, that castles can feel like prisons, that sometimes the most expensive frames hold the ugliest pictures. And my picture, the one I'd been painting for 12 years with careful smiles and perfect appearances. It was about to reveal a betrayal so deep, so calculated, so absolutely devastating that it would bring the police to my doorstep and turn my husband's confident smirk into absolute terror. But let me start at the beginning. Let me tell you how I got here, because I wasn't always Mrs. Marcus Hartwell, wife of a real estate mogul, hostess of charity galas, keeper of a mansion and a dying marriage. I used to be just Alina Rodriguez, a girl from a middle-class family in the Valley, who worked her way through UCLA with student loans and part-time jobs, who graduated with a degree in interior design and dreams that were bigger than her tiny studio apartment. I was 23 when I met Marcus. Fresh out of college, bright-eyed and ambitious, working for a small interior design firm downtown. The kind of place where you spend your first year making coffee runs and copies before anyone trusts you with actual design work. I didn't mind. I was learning, paying my dues, building toward something. Marcus walked into my life on a Tuesday afternoon in September. I remember the exact day because I was wearing my lucky earrings, these small gold hoops my mother had given me for my college graduation. She'd told me they'd bring me good fortune, and maybe she was right, because that's the day everything changed. He came to our firm looking for an interior designer for his new luxury development in Santa Monica. 15 units, high-end finishes, the kind of project that could make a designer's career. He was 32 years old, already wildly successful, with a real estate portfolio that was growing exponentially. He had this presence about him that I'd never encountered before. Not arrogant exactly, but supremely confident. Like he knew exactly who he was, and what he wanted, and had no doubt he'd get it. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair that was always perfectly styled, blue eyes the color of expensive sapphires, and a smile that could charm anyone into anything. He wore suits that were clearly custom-made, shoes that were probably Italian and cost more than my monthly rent, and a watch that I later learned was a limited edition Patek Philippe worth over $100,000. Everything about him screamed success, power, wealth. My boss practically shoved me at him, literally grabbed my arm and pulled me into the conference room where Marcus was waiting. "This is Elena Rodriguez," my boss said, his voice doing that thing where people try to sound more impressive than they are. "She's our rising star, fresh perspective, exactly what your project needs." I wanted to die of embarrassment. I was 23 with exactly 2 completed projects under my belt, both of them small residential jobs. And here was this man who could make or break careers with a single phone call, being told I was the firm's rising star, like I was some kind of design prodigy instead of a recent graduate who still had student loan debt. But Marcus looked at me, really looked at me, and something shifted in the room. His blue eyes met mine and held, not in a creepy way, but in this intense, focused way that made me feel like I was the only person in the entire world at that moment. He smiled, stood up, extended his hand. "Elena Rodriguez," he said, and the way he said my name, with perfect Spanish pronunciation instead of the anglicized version most people used, made something flutter in my chest. "Tell me about your vision for luxury living." That was the beginning. He hired me on the spot, didn't even look at my portfolio. Just said his instincts told him I was exactly who he needed, and he'd built a fortune trusting his instincts. Over the next 3 months, we worked closely on that project. He'd come by the office to review designs, always bringing coffee for everyone, but somehow always ending up sitting next to me, leaning in close to look at sketches, his cologne expensive and subtle and intoxicating. We'd meet at the development site, walking through empty spaces that smelled like fresh paint and sawdust, and I'd describe my vision for each unit while he listened with complete attention. He'd ask questions that showed he was really hearing me, really considering my ideas. He made me feel valued, respected, like my opinions mattered. And then the site visits turned into dinners. To discuss the project, he'd say, taking me to restaurants I'd only read about in magazines. Places where you needed reservations weeks in advance, where the waiters knew everyone by name, where a single meal cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. We'd sit across from each other supposedly talking about design concepts and material choices, but somehow we'd end up talking about everything else. Our childhoods, our dreams, our fears. Marcus told me about growing up poor, raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat. About being hungry some nights because there wasn't enough food. About wearing the same shoes to school until they literally fell apart. About the burning desire he developed to never be poor again, to build something, to matter. He talked about his first property deal at 24, how he'd scraped together every penny for a down payment on a rundown duplex, fixed it up himself, and sold it for twice what he paid. How that first success had lit a fire in him that never went out. He told me about building his company from nothing, about the hungry years when he worked 20-hour days, when he missed holidays and birthdays and sleep to chase deals. About the satisfaction of creating something from nothing, of seeing empty lots transform into buildings where people would live and work and build their own lives. There was passion in his voice when he talked about his work, a genuine love for what he did that went beyond just making money. I fell for him, how could I not? He was handsome, successful, charismatic, and he looked at me like I hung the moon and stars. After a lifetime of being ordinary, of being overlooked, of being just another face in the crowd, Marcus Hartwell made me feel extraordinary, special, chosen. He pursued me with a focus and intensity that was overwhelming and intoxicating. Flowers started arriving at my apartment every single day. Not generic roses from the grocery store, but carefully chosen arrangements that showed he was paying attention. Peonies because I'd mentioned once in passing they were my favorite. Gardenias because he said they reminded him of the perfume I wore. Orchids because, he told me with that devastating smile, they were as elegant and rare as I was. He left handwritten notes at my office desk. Actual notes, on thick cream-colored paper that probably cost more per sheet than my entire notebook, written in black ink in his bold, confident handwriting. They weren't long or flowery, just simple thoughts. Thinking about you. Can't wait to see you tonight. Your smile is the best part of my day. In a world of text messages and emails and instant digital communication, those handwritten notes felt like love letters from another era. He'd show up at my tiny studio apartment in the evenings unannounced, always with food from restaurants I couldn't afford. He'd bring Italian from that place in Beverly Hills where celebrities ate. French cuisine from the chef everyone was talking about. Thai food from a spot he discovered that, he said, reminded him of his travels through Bangkok. And wine. God, the wine. Bottles that cost hundreds of dollars, maybe thousands, that he'd open casually like they were just Tuesday night wine. We'd sit on my lumpy second-hand couch that I'd bought off Craigslist for $50, eating food that belonged in a magazine spread off my mismatched plates, drinking wine from the cheap glasses I'd gotten at Target, and we'd talk. For hours. Until 2, 3, 4 in the morning. He'd ask me questions about my life, my family, my dreams, and he'd actually listen to the answers. Really listen, not just wait for his turn to talk. Smash that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I told him about growing up in the valley, about my parents who'd immigrated from Mexico before I was born, who'd worked hard their whole lives to give me opportunities they never had. About my father who managed a grocery store and my mother who cleaned houses, who'd saved every penny to help with my college tuition. About the pressure I felt to make something of myself, to justify their sacrifices, to prove their struggles weren't in vain. I told him about my grandmother, who'd passed away when I was 15 but who I still missed every single day. About how she'd fled Mexico during dangerous times, had survived things she never talked about, had built a life in a new country through sheer determination. About the sapphire necklace she'd worn on her wedding day and passed down to my mother, who'd given it to me with tears and blessings at my own college graduation. Marcus listened to all of it with those intense blue eyes focused on my face, and he made me feel like my stories mattered. Like my ordinary life was actually fascinating. Like I was fascinating. After years of feeling invisible, of being just another struggling postgrad trying to make it in an expensive city, Marcus made me feel seen. 6 months after we met, he proposed. It was a Saturday evening in March, the air warm with the promise of spring. He'd told me to dress up, that we were going somewhere special. I wore a black dress I'd splurged on with my first real paycheck from the Santa Monica project, simple but elegant. He picked me up in his Mercedes, looking devastating in a dark suit, and drove us to Marina del Rey where his yacht was docked. Yes, his yacht, because apparently successful real estate developers have yachts. It was called Elevation, which I later learned was his philosophy about life, always elevating. Always rising, never staying in one place. It was beautiful, sleek and white and expensive, the kind of boat I'd only ever seen in movies. We sailed out into the open water as the sun started to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. There was a chef on board who'd prepared this elaborate meal, courses that kept coming like waves. There was champagne, the kind with the orange label that I knew cost a fortune. There was music playing softly from speakers I couldn't see. It was the most romantic thing I'd ever experienced. After dinner, we went out on the deck. The city lights were twinkling in the distance, the stars were coming out overhead, and the water was calm and dark and infinite. Marcus stood next to me at the railing, his hand over mine, and we just looked out at the night for a long moment. Then he turned to me, and I saw something in his face I'd never seen before. Vulnerability. This powerful, confident man who always seemed so sure of everything looked nervous. His hands were shaking slightly when he took both of mine. "Alina," he said, and his voice was rougher than usual. "I've been successful in business. I've made money. I've built things. I've achieved every goal I ever set for myself. But none of it has ever felt complete. None of it has ever felt like enough. Until you." He got down on one knee right there on the deck, and my heart stopped. Literally stopped beating for a second. "You're my missing piece," he continued, still holding my hands, looking up at me with those incredible eyes shining with emotion. "You're my home. You're my future. You make me want to be better, do better, build a life instead of just building buildings. Alina Rodriguez, will you marry me?" He let go of one of my hands to pull out a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. When he opened it, I actually gasped out loud. The ring was enormous. A platinum band with a center diamond that had to be at least 4 carats, round cut and so clear it looked like captured light, surrounded by smaller diamonds that created this halo effect. It caught the moonlight and the yacht lights and seemed to glow from within. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only stare at this ring and this man and this moment that felt too perfect to be real. "Yes," I finally managed to whisper. Then louder, "Yes, yes, of course, yes." He slid the ring onto my finger and it fit perfectly, like it was made for me, like I was made for this moment. He stood up and kissed me, and the crew who'd been discreetly watching from inside the cabin started clapping and cheering. Champagne corks popped, music got louder, and I stood there on that yacht in the arms of this incredible man, wearing a ring that probably cost more than my parents' house, thinking this was it. This was my fairy tale. This was where my real life began. We got married 6 months later. Marcus didn't want to wait, said he'd already wasted 32 years of his life before me and didn't want to waste another day. The wedding was enormous. Over 300 guests at a venue that looked like a French palace. Celebrities I recognized from movies. Business moguls whose names I'd seen in Forbes. Politicians. Influencers. People whose combined net worth could probably fund a small country. My dress was custom-made by a designer whose name I'd only heard whispered in reverent tones. White silk that fit like it was painted on, with delicate lace and thousands of tiny crystals hand-sewn into patterns that caught the light. It had a train that needed 3 people to carry. I felt like a princess. No, like a queen. My mother cried the entire day. Happy tears, she kept saying, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. She was so proud, so grateful. Her daughter was marrying well, marrying up, marrying into the kind of security and stability she'd never known. My father walked me down the aisle with his chest puffed out, shaking hands with people who had 10 times his net worth, basking in the reflected glory of his daughter's good fortune. The ceremony was beautiful. Flower arrangements that cost more than most people's entire weddings. A string quartet playing classical music. Vows we'd written ourselves that promised forever, promised partnership, promised love through everything life might throw at us. When Marcus slipped the wedding band onto my finger, it fit perfectly next to the engagement ring, creating this seamless line of platinum and diamonds. When I put his ring on his finger, simple platinum but substantial and expensive, my hands were shaking with joy. The reception was like something out of a movie, a 7-course dinner prepared by a celebrity chef, wine that was probably older than me, a cake that was 6 tiers of edible artwork, dancing until midnight, toasts that made me laugh and cry. And through it all, Marcus kept looking at me like I was the most precious thing in his world, like he couldn't believe his luck, like he'd won the lottery. We honeymooned in Bora Bora for 2 weeks, an overwater bungalow with glass floors so you could watch fish swim beneath you, private dinners on the beach, spa treatments, snorkeling, sunsets that looked like paintings, and sex, so much sex. The kind where you can't keep your hands off each other, where you wake up tangled together and immediately need each other again, where the outside world completely disappears. When we came back, we moved into the house Marcus had bought while we were engaged. Not the mansion we'd eventually live in, but still impressive. 4 bedrooms in a good neighborhood, more space than I knew what to do with. He'd had it furnished by a professional while we were gone, everything perfectly coordinated and expensive. Walking into that house felt surreal. This was mine now. This was my life. first few years were blissful. We were building something together. Marcus's business was growing exponentially, and I was right there with him, helping design his developments, hosting dinners for his investors, being his partner in every sense of the word. We traveled constantly. Paris in the spring, where we walked along the Seine and explored museums, and he bought me vintage earrings from an antique shop near Notre Dame. They were Art Deco, emeralds and diamonds in an intricate geometric pattern that took my breath away. Tokyo in the summer, where the city lights dazzled and the culture fascinated us, and he surprised me with pearl earrings from a master jeweler who'd been crafting pieces for 70 years. The Maldives for our first anniversary, where we stayed in an overwater villa and did nothing but relax and reconnect for 7 perfect days. He gave me emerald earrings there, told me they matched my eyes, kissed me until I forgot my own name. Barcelona for my 25th birthday, where he'd arranged a private after-hours tour of the Sagrada Familia. We walked through that incredible cathedral alone except for our guide, looking up at the stained glass windows that turned sunlight into rainbows. Afterward, at dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant overlooking the Mediterranean, he gave me a diamond bracelet in an antique box. When I opened it, my hands started shaking. "This belonged to a French duchess," he told me, fastening it around my wrist. "It's from the 1920s. I bought it at an auction in London. The moment I saw it, I thought of you. Elegant, timeless, rare." I cried, actual tears running down my face in this fancy restaurant, while other diners probably thought he'd proposed or something equally momentous. But it wasn't about the value of the bracelet, though it was clearly worth a fortune. It was about the fact that he'd thought of me, that he'd seen something beautiful and wanted me to have it, that he was always thinking of ways to make me happy. For our second anniversary, Art Deco earrings with emeralds and diamonds that perfectly matched the ones from Paris. For our third, a ruby bracelet that had belonged to an Italian contessa, with documentation tracing its history back to 1890. For our fifth, another piece of history, another treasure, another token of his love. But here's what mattered more than the gifts. He paid attention. He listened. He knew I didn't care about flashy, look-at-me jewelry. I cared about pieces with history, with stories, with craftsmanship that spoke to the artistry of the maker. Every gift he gave me showed he understood that, showed he understood me. I treasured those pieces, kept them in my safe with the same care I gave to my family heirlooms, because they weren't just expensive jewelry. They were proof that someone saw me, really saw me, understood what mattered to me, valued what I valued. And my family pieces, God, those were my heart in physical form. My grandmother's sapphire necklace, the one she'd worn when she married my grandfather in 1952. It was white gold, delicate but strong, with a deep blue sapphire the size of my thumbnail surrounded by small diamonds in a halo setting. The sapphire had this incredible depth to it. You could look into it and see layers of blue, like looking into deep water. My grandmother had worn that necklace through everything. Through the hard years when my grandfather was fighting in Korea and she didn't know if he'd come home. Through the depression that affected their generation so deeply. Through losing a baby between my uncle and my mother, a grief she carried silently. Through burying her husband when I was 10 and becoming a widow who still wore her wedding necklace every day until she died. My mother had worn it on her wedding day, had worn it to my baptism, my first communion, my quinceañera, my high school graduation, my college graduation, my wedding. When she gave it to me the morning of my wedding, her hands were shaking. "This necklace has seen 3 marriages now," she said, fastening it around my neck with tears streaming down her face. "Mine, my mother's, and now yours. It survived wars and recessions and hard times. It's a reminder that love, real love, endures, that we come from strong women who survive. Wear it today and remember where you come from, and someday, God willing, you'll pass it to your own daughter." I'd sobbed, completely ruined my makeup and had to have it redone. But I wore that necklace down the aisle, wore it at my reception, wore it on my honeymoon, and then I'd carefully placed it in my safe, this precious link to the women who came before me. There was also my mother's pearl set, a necklace and earrings of Baroque pearls. Irregular, unique, no two exactly alike, set in antique silver. They'd been her grandmother's, brought from Mexico when she fled north, one of the few precious things she'd managed to bring. My mother had worn them to every important event of her life. She'd given them to me on my 30th birthday, saying she wanted me to have them while she was alive to see me enjoy them. And the ruby ring, oh God, that ring. Blood-red stone in an intricate Victorian gold setting, tiny seed pearls surrounding the central ruby. It had been in our family for 4 generations, passed from mother to daughter, each woman wearing it and protecting it and passing it on. The band was worn thin in places from decades of being worn. You could see where each woman's finger had smoothed the gold. These pieces weren't just jewelry. They were my legacy. My connection to women I'd never met but whose blood ran in my veins. They were proof that my family had survived, had loved, had built lives and passed something precious down through time. They were irreplaceable in a way that had nothing to do with monetary value and everything to do with meaning. Marcus knew this. I told him the stories while he held each piece carefully, examining them with respect. He'd listened to me talk about my grandmother's strength, my great-grandmother's courage, the unbroken line of women who'd worn these pieces. He'd understood, or at least I thought he had, that these weren't things that could be bought or replaced. They were pieces of my soul in physical form. I kept them in my personal safe, the one in my walk-in closet hidden behind a rack of designer heels. The safe was mine, my private space, secured with a code that was my mother's birthday. 4 digits that meant everything to me. I thought I was the only one who knew that code. I was wrong about that. I was wrong about so many things. But for those first few years, everything seemed perfect. We upgraded to the mansion when Marcus's company hit a major milestone. 8 bedrooms we didn't need. 10 bathrooms that were more like spas. A pool with a waterfall feature. A wine cellar. A home theater. A garage that could fit 6 cars. It was excessive and ridiculous and absolutely beautiful. I decorated it myself, spending months choosing every detail, making it a home instead of just a showplace. I created cozy reading nooks and warm gathering spaces. I filled it with art and fresh flowers and the smell of good cooking. I tried to make our palace feel like a home. And for a while, it worked. We had friends over for dinner parties, hosted charity events, spent lazy Sundays by the pool, made love in the middle of the day just because we could. Life was good. Life was better than good. Life was everything I'd ever dreamed of. But somewhere around year 7, things started to shift. It was subtle at first, so subtle I didn't even notice it happening. Marcus started working later, coming home at 9 instead of 7, then 10, then midnight. He was building his empire, expanding into new markets, taking on bigger projects. I understood. I supported him. I was proud of him. The business trips increased. He'd always traveled for work, but suddenly it was twice as often. A conference in Vegas. A property tour in Miami, investor meetings in New York. He'd be gone for days at a time, coming back exhausted, distracted, already thinking about the next trip. The phone calls started happening in other rooms. His phone, which used to sit casually on the kitchen counter, was now always face down, always within arm's reach, always password protected. When it rang during dinner, which was rare since we barely had dinner together anymore, he'd glance at it and excuse himself. "Work," he'd say. "Important call. Sorry, I have to take this." I told myself this was normal. This was the price of success. He was building something bigger than both of us, securing our future, making sure we'd never want for anything. The money was certainly pouring in. Our already substantial wealth doubled, then tripled. We bought investment properties, made strategic acquisitions. His company was growing so fast it was dizzying. But while our bank accounts grew, the space between us grew too. We went from being partners to being roommates, strangers who happened to share an address. By year 10, we had actual separate wings of the mansion, his office, his bedroom, his bathroom, his space, and mine. We'd pass each other in the hallways like guests in a hotel, see each other at breakfast sometimes, making small talk about nothing important before he left for work and I started my day. The charity galas continued. We still attended together, still smiled for the cameras, still played the role of the perfect power couple. But in the car ride there, silence. At the event, performing. In the car ride home, more silence. Then we'd go to our separate bedrooms and I'd lie there alone, wondering when exactly I'd become invisible. I kept myself busy because what else was I supposed to do? Sit around waiting for my husband to notice me again? I volunteered at 3 different charities, putting my organizational skills and resources to good use. I ran a small online jewelry appraisal business from home, using the knowledge I'd accumulated over the years to help people understand what they owned. It wasn't about money. I certainly didn't need money, but about having a purpose. About using my brain for something other than planning seating charts for dinner parties. I had friends, a book club that met every Thursday, yoga classes 3 mornings a week, brunch dates and shopping trips and museum visits, a life that looked full and rich from the outside. But inside, I was hollowing out, becoming a shell of the woman I used to be. The woman who'd been so full of dreams and passion and life was fading away, replaced by a polished, empty version who smiled on command and felt nothing. At night, lying in my enormous custom bed in my beautiful bedroom in our showcase mansion, I'd stare at the ceiling and feel the emptiness pressing on my chest like a physical weight. The silence was so loud it hurt. I'd lie there for hours, unable to sleep, wondering when exactly everything had gone wrong. When had I stopped being Alina, the woman Marcus couldn't live without, and become Mrs. Hartwell, the decorative wife? When had he stopped seeing me? When had my presence in his life become an obligation instead of a joy? I'd ask myself these questions in the dark and never find satisfying answers. Just theories. Maybe it was my fault for not being interesting enough. Maybe I'd let myself become boring, predictable, comfortable. Maybe the spark had died because I'd stopped trying to keep it alive. Maybe if I just tried harder, dressed better, smiled more, was more interesting, he'd come back to me. I tortured myself with these thoughts, blamed myself for the growing distance, convinced myself that if I could just be better somehow, we'd find our way back to each other. I never once considered that maybe the problem wasn't me, that maybe Marcus had changed, that maybe the man I'd fallen in love with didn't exist anymore if he ever really had. Then came that Tuesday afternoon in late April that changed everything. The day the careful lies I'd been telling myself shattered into a million pieces. The day I discovered that my loneliness wasn't the result of a natural drift in a long marriage. It was the result of calculated betrayal. I'd gone to the Riverside Mall that afternoon, not my usual shopping destination. Marcus and I typically shopped in Beverly Hills or downtown at the high-end boutiques where salespeople knew our names and brought champagne while we browsed. But sometimes I needed to feel normal, to walk through regular stores where nobody recognized me, to grab a soft pretzel from a kiosk and browse bookstores where the staff didn't hover. I'd spent a pleasant few hours just being anonymous, bought 3 novels I probably wouldn't have time to read, got one of those oversalted pretzels that burns your mouth but tastes amazing, browsed through a home goods store looking at candles, and throw pillows I absolutely didn't need. It was mundane and ordinary and exactly what I needed. I was walking toward the exit, shopping bags in hand, already thinking about the drive home, when I passed the coffee shop near the food court, and my entire world ended. There, sitting at a small round table by the window where anyone could see them, was my husband, Marcus, wearing the charcoal suit I'd helped him pick out last month. His hand was on top of hers on the table, fingers intertwined like lovers, like people who had every right to touch each other. She was young, 27, maybe 28, stunningly beautiful in that effortless way some women are, long dark hair falling in waves over her shoulders, the kind of hair you see in shampoo commercials. She was wearing a red dress that hugged her curves, the kind of dress that turns heads, and she was laughing at something Marcus had said, throwing her head back with pure, uninhibited joy. I knew that laugh, or rather, I used to know it. Used to laugh like that before marriage became a business arrangement and joy became something I faked at charity events. Watching her laugh, watching Marcus look at her with an expression I recognized because it used to be directed at me, I felt something inside my chest crack open. But it wasn't seeing them together that destroyed me. It was what she was wearing around her neck. My grandmother's sapphire necklace. The world stopped, literally stopped. The noise of the mall faded to nothing. The people walking around me froze like a paused video. All I could see was that necklace, that precious, irreplaceable, sacred piece of my family's history, hanging around a stranger's neck while my husband held her hand and looked at her like she was everything. My shopping bags hit the floor. I didn't drop them intentionally. My hands just stopped working. Everything stopped working. My lungs forgot how to breathe. My heart forgot how to beat. My brain forgot how to process information beyond the simple, devastating fact, that's my grandmother's necklace. People were walking around me, giving me annoyed looks for blocking the walkway, probably thinking I was drunk or high or having some kind of episode. They weren't wrong about that last part. I was having an episode, a complete mental breakdown in the middle of a shopping mall food court. I reached out blindly and grabbed the railing along the walkway, held onto it like it was the only thing keeping me upright. Because it was. My legs had turned to liquid. My vision was doing this weird thing where everything got dark around the edges and sparkly in the center. I thought I might throw up, or faint, or both. That necklace, the one my grandmother wore on her wedding day in 1952, the one that had survived wars and hardships and grief, the one my mother had placed around my neck with trembling hands and tears in her eyes, telling me it represented the strength of the women who came before me. The one I kept locked in my personal safe, in my private closet, in my own home. It was around this stranger's neck, this beautiful young woman who was laughing at my husband's jokes, whose hand he was holding with a tenderness he hadn't shown me in years, who was wearing my history like a borrowed scarf. Something in my brain clicked into survival mode. Don't scream, don't cry, don't make a scene, don't confront them, get evidence, prove this is real. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold my phone, but I got it out of my purse, turned on the camera, and started taking pictures. I was partially hidden behind a pillar, far enough away that they wouldn't notice but close enough that the camera could capture everything. Their faces, clear and unmistakable. Marcus's profile, that jawline I'd traced with my fingers countless times. Her face, beautiful and young and completely unaware she was being photographed. Their hands on the table, intertwined. The intimacy of their body language, leaning toward each other like magnets. And that necklace. I took at least 20 photos of that necklace alone, zooming in to capture every detail. The white gold chain, the deep blue sapphire, the diamond halo. The way it caught the afternoon light exactly the way I remembered from seeing my grandmother wear it in old photographs. Some of my photos were blurry because my hands wouldn't stop shaking, but enough came out clear. Perfect, damning evidence that this wasn't a nightmare. This was my real life, falling apart in a food court while strangers walked by eating pretzels. I don't remember walking to my car. My body was on autopilot, moving through space while my mind was somewhere else entirely, somewhere dark and screaming. I remember sitting in the driver's seat of my Mercedes, the one Marcus had bought me for our 10th anniversary with a bow on top like in commercials, and staring at my hands on the steering wheel. They were still shaking. Everything was shaking. Then I drove home. Somehow made it through traffic without causing an accident even though I couldn't tell you a single thing about that drive. My brain was stuck in a loop, replaying the image of that necklace around her neck over and over and over. I pulled into our circular driveway with its pretentious fountain in the middle, looked up at our mansion with its perfect architecture and expensive landscaping, and thought, I don't know this place. I don't know this life. I don't know anything. I went straight to my closet. Didn't take off my shoes or put down my purse or check my makeup or do any of the little rituals I usually did when I came home. Just walked with laser focus to the back of my walk-in closet, shoved aside the rack of designer heels that hurt my feet, and stared at the safe hidden in the wall. My hands were still shaking as I entered the code. 4 digits, my mother's birthday, the same code it had been for years. The safe clicked open and I pulled the door wide, already knowing what I'd find. Or rather, what I wouldn't find. The sapphire necklace was gone. The blue velvet box that should have held it sat empty on the shelf, its lid open, mocking me with its emptiness. But I needed to know the full extent of the theft. I started going through the safe with increasingly frantic movements, pulling out boxes and pouches, opening them, finding them empty. one after another after another. The emerald and diamond Art Deco earrings from Paris. Gone. The pearls that my mother had given me, the Baroque pearls from my great-grandmother. Gone. The ruby bracelet from the Italian Contessa. Gone. The diamond bracelet from the French Duchess. Gone. I pulled out every single item in that safe, checking my mental inventory against physical reality. By the time I was done, I was surrounded by empty boxes and the devastating math. 12 pieces of jewelry were missing. Not all of them, the safe wasn't completely empty. The ruby ring was still there, sized to my finger and useless to anyone else. A few other pieces remained, the less flashy ones, the ones that wouldn't photograph well for social media. But the best pieces, the most beautiful, most valuable, most meaningful ones, all gone, stolen from my safe, the safe that only 2 people had the code to. Me and Marcus, my husband, the man I'd trusted with everything. I sat down on the closet floor right there among the empty boxes and the designer shoes and the expensive clothes. Sat there in my nice outfit with my styled hair and my diamond wedding rings that suddenly felt like handcuffs, and I cried. Not delicate tears, not sad sniffles. Huge, ugly, gasping sobs that tore from my chest and echoed off the walls of my enormous closet. I cried until my throat was raw and my eyes were so swollen I could barely see. I cried until there was nothing left inside me, until I was completely empty. I cried for my grandmother's necklace that had survived so much only to be stolen by my own husband. For my mother's pearls that she'd entrusted to me. For 4 generations of women who'd protected these pieces and passed them down, never imagining I'd be the one to lose them. I cried for my marriage, for 12 years of my life invested in a man who could violate me like this. For the girl I'd been at 23, so full of hope and love and trust, who had no idea what was coming. For the woman I'd become, so hollow and lost she barely recognized herself. But here's the thing about crying until you're empty. About hitting rock bottom so hard it knocks every bit of air from your lungs. In that empty space, something new can grow. Something that isn't soft or hopping or trusting. Rage. Pure, cold, clarifying rage. It started as a small spark in the hollow of my chest, then grew, spread, consumed everything until I was filled with it. Not hot, explosive anger. Ice-cold fury that sharpened my thoughts and focused my vision and turned my tears into something useful. I stood up from that closet floor, washed my face with cold water until the swelling went down, fixed my makeup, changed into fresh clothes, crisp white shirt and black pants like I was dressing for war. Because I was. Marcus Hartwell had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He thought I was weak, compliant, too comfortable in my luxury to fight back. He thought I'd never notice, or if I did notice, wouldn't do anything about it. He'd underestimated me completely. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. And by the time I was done, the police would be involved, his business would be exposed, his mistress would know exactly what kind of man she was sleeping with, and Marcus's smug, confident smile would be replaced with absolute terror. All because he couldn't keep his hands off my grandmother's necklace. All because he thought I didn't matter. He was about to learn just how much I mattered, and just how dangerous a woman becomes when you steal the last things she has to lose. I didn't sleep that night, not a single second. I lay in my enormous bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through everything I knew, everything I'd discovered, everything I needed to do. By the time the sun started filtering through my curtains, painting the room in shades of gold and pink, I'd made several critical decisions that would change everything. First, I needed professional help. This wasn't something I could handle alone, no matter how angry I was. I needed someone who knew how to fight men like Marcus. Someone who'd seen his type before and knew exactly how to dismantle them piece by piece. Second, I needed information. Real information. Not just about the affair, but about everything. Our finances, his business, the full scope of what I was dealing with. Because if Marcus had been hiding one mistress, if he'd been stealing from me, what else had he been hiding? And third, most importantly, I needed to be smart, strategic. patient. The old Alina would have confronted him immediately, would have screamed and cried and demanded explanations. But the woman I'd become overnight, the one forged in rage and betrayal, understood that revenge is a dish best served cold, with evidence, with planning, with the full force of the law behind it. I got up, showered, dressed in a navy blue suit that made me look serious and professional. I did my makeup carefully, covering the evidence of last night's tears. Put on the diamond studs Marcus had given me for our 3rd anniversary, because irony. Looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes were hard, determined, a little bit scary if I'm being honest. I made myself coffee and toast that I couldn't eat. Going through the motions of a normal morning while my insides churned with purpose. Then I went to my home office, the one room in this mansion that was entirely mine, and I started making calls. The first call was to my bank, not our joint accounts, but my personal one. The account I'd opened 5 years ago when I started my jewelry appraisal business. The account Marcus knew about but paid no attention to because the amounts were, in his world, insignificant. I needed to know exactly what I had to work with. Mrs. Hartwell, the bank manager said warmly. He'd helped me set up this account, had watched it grow over the years. What can I do for you today? I need a complete summary of my account, I said. Current balance, recent transactions, everything. And I need to know about moving funds, making sure the account is secure, protected from any joint account access. There was a pause. Bank managers are trained to read between the lines. Of course, is everything all right? It will be, I said. I just need to protect my assets. He understood immediately. Probably dealt with situations like this more often than I realized. Wealthy wives discovering their husbands' betrayals and scrambling to secure what was theirs. I'll send you a complete statement within the hour. And Mrs. Hartwell, you might want to consider speaking with a financial advisor about asset protection. I can recommend someone discreet. Thank you, I said. I appreciate that. The summary arrived in my email 43 minutes later. I opened it with shaking hands. The balance made me let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. $218,000, not millions like Marcus had, but substantial. Money I'd earned myself through appraisals, consultations, and some smart investments I'd made on my own. Money that was entirely, completely mine. It was enough to hire a lawyer, enough to fight, enough to make sure I wasn't helpless. The second call was harder. I pulled up the contact information for Catherine Price, the divorce attorney I'd met at a charity gala 3 years ago. She was a legend in Lowe's Angels. The woman wealthy men feared and wealthy women called when they were done being victims. She'd given me her card at that gala with a knowing look, like she could see the cracks in my marriage before I could. I'd kept the card in my wallet ever since, not knowing why, just feeling like I should. What do we do? I asked. We need to confirm she was an employee. Get proof. HR records would be ideal, but we don't have access to those yet. Can you find anything else? Any other evidence of the employment relationship? I was already scrolling through Sienna's Instagram with renewed focus. Let me look. I'll call you back. I spent the next 3 hours going through every single post, every photo, every caption on Sienna's social media. And slowly, I built a timeline. 9 months ago, loving my new job, best boss ever. 8 months ago, a photo of an office building I recognized as one of Marcus's properties. Caption, another day in paradise. 7 months ago, a selfie in what looked like a luxury car. Caption, company car perks, smiling face with hard eyes, the car was a BMW. Marcus's company leased BMWs for senior staff. 6 months ago, that's when the jewelry started appearing. The emerald earrings and a selfie. Caption, feeling grateful for beautiful gifts from beautiful people. I cross-referenced the dates with my own calendar, with Marcus's travel schedule that I'd always had access to through his assistant. Every time Sienna posted from a luxury hotel, Marcus had been traveling to that same city for business. Miami, Vegas, New York, San Francisco. They'd been traveling together on company time, probably billing it as business expenses, probably staying in hotels paid for by the company. This wasn't just an affair. This was embezzlement, fraud, misuse of company funds. I called Catherine back with shaking hands. I have a timeline, I said. Photos, posts, travel records. She was an employee and they've been using company resources for the affair. Company cars, company travel. He's been billing their affair to the business. Alina, Catherine said, and her voice had an edge of excitement I hadn't heard before. We're not just going to win your divorce. We're going to destroy him. This is fraud. His business partners need to know. His investors need to know. And if the company is publicly traded or has shareholders, they definitely need to know. It's privately held, I said, but he has investors, major ones, people who have put millions into his developments. Even better, Catherine said. Private investors hate scandals, hate liability. When they find out he's been using company funds for an affair with an employee, they're going to distance themselves so fast his head will spin. Alina, I need you to send me everything you found. Every photo, every post, every correlation. We're going to build a case so airtight he won't know what hit him. I spent the rest of that evening compiling everything into a comprehensive document. Screenshots, dates, correlations, a complete timeline of the affair mapped against company travel and resources. By the time I was done, it was past midnight, and I had a 70-page document that told the complete story of Marcus Hartwell's betrayal. Not just of me, but of his company, his investors, everyone who'd trusted him. I emailed it to Catherine, and then I sat back, staring at my computer screen, feeling something shift inside me. This had started as hurt, as betrayal, as a woman discovering her husband's affair and wanting her jewelry back. But it had become something bigger, something more important. This was about justice, about accountability, about making sure that men like Marcus couldn't abuse their power, couldn't steal and cheat and lie without consequences. Tomorrow he'd be served with divorce papers. Tomorrow his world would start to crumble, and he'd have no one to blame but himself. I went to bed that night and actually slept, really slept for the first time in days, because I wasn't powerless anymore. I wasn't a victim. I was a woman with evidence and a plan and the best lawyer in Lowe's Angels. And Marcus Hartwell's perfect life was about to become a nightmare. Tuesday morning dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect Lowe's Angels day that felt like a sign. I woke up at 6, worked out, showered, and dressed in one of my favorite outfits. A cream silk blouse and tailored black pants. I looked professional, put together, like a woman in control of her life. Because I was. Marcus left for work at 8, like he always did. Kissed me absently on the cheek, a habit from better days that he maintained out of routine rather than affection. I smiled and told him to have a good day, knowing it would be anything but. He'd be served at 2 p.m. Catherine had arranged for a professional process server to deliver the papers to his office, right in the middle of his workday, probably in front of employees and colleagues. It was a power move, a statement, the first blow in a war he didn't know had started. I spent the morning in a state of nervous energy, couldn't sit still, cleaned things that didn't need cleaning, reorganized my closet, finally gave up and went for a drive just to move, to do something. At 2:15 my phone rang. Catherine. He's been served, she said without preamble. And Alina, he lost it. The process server said he turned white as a sheet, started yelling, demanding to know what this was about, tried to refuse the papers, made quite a scene. I felt a savage satisfaction at that image. Good. He's going to call you, Catherine warned. Probably very soon. He's going to be angry, confused, probably threatening. Do not engage, don't answer his calls, don't respond to texts. Let him stew, let him panic. Can you do that? Yes, I said, I can do that. Good girl, I'll call you later with an update. But Alina, congratulations. You just took the first step toward freedom. She hung up and I sat in my car in a random parking lot, gripping the steering wheel, feeling my heart race. It was real now. There was no going back. I'd just blown up my marriage, my life, everything I'd known for 12 years. And it felt amazing. My phone started buzzing, Marcus calling. I watched it ring, watched his name flash on the screen, and I didn't answer. It went to voicemail, immediately started ringing again. I declined the call. Again. After the 5th call, I turned my phone on silent and put it in my purse. I drove to a coffee shop, ordered something I didn't drink, and sat by the window watching people live their normal lives. Going to work, meeting friends. No idea that my entire existence was imploding just a few feet away. When I finally checked my phone an hour later, I had 17 missed calls from Marcus, 12 text messages, 3 voicemails. I didn't listen to the voicemails, but I read the texts with grim satisfaction. What the hell is this? Call me now. Alina, this isn't funny. We need to talk immediately. You're making a huge mistake. Do you have any idea what you're doing? Call me or I'm coming home. And then, interestingly, the tone shifted. Alina, please, let's talk about this. I know you're upset, I understand, but this isn't the way. We can work this out, just call me. From anger to bargaining, the first stage of his panic. Good. I didn't respond, followed Catherine's instructions exactly. Let him panic, let him wonder, let him feel out of control for the first time in his life. I went home around 4. His car wasn't in the driveway. He was probably still at the office, probably meeting with his own lawyers, probably trying to figure out how to minimize the damage. Let him try. I was in the living room with a glass of wine when he finally came home at 7. I heard the side door slam, heard his footsteps heavy and angry on the marble floor. He appeared in the living room doorway looking like I'd never seen him before. Disheveled, tie loose, hair messy from running his hands through it, face flushed with anger. What the hell, Alina? He demanded. I took a sip of my wine, looked at him calmly. Hello, Marcus, how was your day? Don't play games with me, he said, his voice rising. Divorce papers, served at my office in front of my entire staff. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I'm done, I said simply. Done, you're done, he laughed bitterly. You don't just decide you're done, we're married, we have a life together. No, I corrected. You have a life, with Sienna. I'm just the wife you keep around for appearances. His face went even redder. So this is about her, about one mistake. One mistake. I set down my wine glass carefully. Marcus, you've been having an affair for 8 months. You've been stealing my jewelry to give to her. You've been moving our money to offshore accounts for 3 years. This isn't one mistake. This is a pattern of betrayal. He looked shocked that I knew about the offshore accounts. Good. Let him realize I wasn't as clueless as he thought. You went through my things, he said accusingly. My private office. Nothing in this house is private from your wife, I shot back. Or it shouldn't be, but you've been keeping plenty private from me, haven't you? He ran his hands through his hair again, packing. Okay, you're right, I messed up. The affair was wrong. Moving money was wrong. But Alina, we can fix this. We can go to counseling, work through it. You don't need to blow up our entire life. Our entire life? I stood up, faced him. Marcus, you blew up our life the moment you decided I wasn't enough. The moment you decided to cheat, to steal, to lie. I'm just making it official. You'll get nothing, he said, and there it was, the threat I'd been waiting for. Everything is in my name, the house, the cars, the business. You walk away from this marriage with nothing. I smiled then, actually smiled. Is that what you think? Marcus, we live in California, community property state. I'm entitled to half of everything acquired during our marriage. That house you think is yours, half mine. Those investment properties, half mine. Your business, half mine. You don't get to steal from me anymore. His face went pale. You've been talking to a lawyer. Catherine Price, I said, enjoying watching him process that name. I believe you know her reputation. He did. Every wealthy man in Lowe's Angels knew Catherine Price's reputation. She was the shark who ate men like Marcus for breakfast. Alina, please. He switched tactics again, his voice softening. Don't do this. Don't destroy what we've built. I know I hurt you. I know I broke your trust. But we can rebuild. I'll end things with Sienna. I'll be better. I'll prove to you that you're the one I want. I don't believe you, I said flatly. And more importantly, I don't want you anymore. You're not the man I married. Maybe you never were. Either way, I'm done being invisible. Done being taken for granted. Done playing the perfect wife while you destroy everything I value. I'll fight this, he said, anger creeping back into his voice. I have lawyers too. Better lawyers, more expensive lawyers. You have no idea what you're up against. Neither do you, I said quietly. You really should have kept your hands off my grandmother's necklace, Marcus. That was your biggest mistake. He looked confused. What does that have to do with anything? You'll find out, I said. Now I think you should leave. This is going to be my house soon enough. Might as well get used to not living here. This is my house, he shouted. I bought it, I paid for it. Everything here is because of me. Get out, Marcus, I said, my voice cold. Or I'll call the police and have you removed for harassment. He stared at me like I was a stranger, like he couldn't comprehend that his compliant wife had grown teeth. You've changed, he said. No, I corrected. I just remembered who I was before you convinced me I was nothing. Now get out. He left, finally, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I heard his car peel out of the driveway with a screech of tires, and then silence. Beautiful, peaceful silence. I sat back down, picked up my wine, and allowed myself a moment of pure satisfaction. Round one to me. My phone buzzed, a text from Catherine. How'd it go? I texted back. He threatened me, tried to bargain, then left when I told him to. I think he's scared. Good, he should be. Come by my office tomorrow morning. We need to discuss next steps. And Alina, you did great. I smiled at my phone. Then I pulled up my photos, looked at the images of Sienna wearing my grandmother's necklace, and made another decision. It was time to pay Sienna a visit. Time to introduce myself to the woman who'd been wearing my jewelry. Time to let her know exactly who she was dealing with. Because this wasn't just about Marcus anymore. Sienna had my family's heirlooms. She'd been flaunting them on social media like trophies. And whether she knew Marcus was married or not, she needed to know the truth now. I spent the next hour going through Sienna's social media again, this time looking for her address. It didn't take long. Influencers love to share their lives, and Sienna was no exception. A post from last week showed her outside her apartment building, a modern complex in West Hollywood. The building number was visible in the background. Another post from inside her apartment showed a view that, when I cross-referenced with the building's website, told me exactly which floor and which unit. People made stalking so easy these days. I wasn't going tonight. I was going to plan this carefully. But soon, very soon, Sienna Marsh was going to get a visitor she wasn't expecting. And by the time our conversation was over, she'd know exactly what kind of man she'd been sleeping with. The next morning, I met Catherine at her office. She had news. The forensic accountant went through everything you sent, she said, sliding a folder across her desk to me. Marcus has been even busier than we thought. He's hidden almost $6 million in offshore accounts. $6 million, Alina. That's $3 million that's legally yours. The number was staggering. How did he hide that much? Slowly, over time, small transfers that wouldn't raise flags, fake business expenses, shell companies. He's been planning this for a long time, which actually works in our favor, shows premeditation, shows intent to defraud you. A judge is going to hate this. What about Sienna, the employee angle? Catherine smiled. I had my investigator pull Marcus's company HR records. Sienna Marsh was hired 9 months ago as a marketing consultant. Salary of $90,000 a year. But here's the interesting part. She has no marketing experience, no degree in marketing, no previous jobs in marketing. She was a model and a wannabe influencer before this. So he created a fake job for her, I said. Exactly. Hired her, put her on payroll, gave her a company car and corporate credit card. And she's been using both liberally. Expensive lunches, shopping trips, hotels, all billed to Hartwell Developments as marketing expenses. His investors are going to lose their minds when they find out. Are we going to tell them? I asked. Not yet, Catherine said. But we're going to threaten to. Marcus needs to know that if he doesn't settle this divorce fairly, we'll expose everything. The affair, the fraud, The misuse of company funds will destroy his reputation and his business. That's our leverage. I nodded, feeling the pieces come together. What about the jewelry? Can we get it back? Catherine leaned back in her chair. That's where things get interesting. I've been thinking about the police angle. Technically, taking jewelry from your safe without permission is theft, even between spouses. Especially family heirlooms that are arguably your separate property. We could file a police report. Would they actually do anything? I asked. Maybe, maybe not. Domestic cases are tricky, but the threat might be enough to scare Sienna into returning the pieces, especially if she didn't know Marcus was married. If she thought they were genuine gifts and suddenly finds out they're stolen property, she might cooperate to avoid legal trouble herself. I want to talk to her, I said suddenly. Face to face. I want to confront her, tell her the truth, and demand my jewelry back. Catherine looked concerned. Elena, I'm not sure that's a good idea. Confrontations can go wrong. You could say something that hurts our case. I'll be careful, I promised. But Catherine, she has my grandmother's necklace. She's wearing my mother's pearls in Instagram photos. I can't just sit back and let lawyers handle this. I need to look her in the eye and tell her those pieces belong to me. Catherine studied me for a long moment. If you do this, you need to be smart about it. Don't threaten her. Don't get aggressive. Just tell her the truth. Tell her Marcus is married. Tell her the jewelry is stolen. Give her a chance to do the right thing. Can you do that? Yes, I said. I can do that. And Elena, record the conversation on your phone. We might need it later. I nodded. My mind was already racing ahead, planning what I'd say, how I'd approach her, how I'd make her understand the magnitude of what she'd been part of. That afternoon, I drove to West Hollywood, parked outside Sienna's building, sat in my car for 20 minutes gathering my courage. This was it. This was the moment where I stopped being a victim and became someone who fought for what was hers. I checked my phone, set it to record audio, put it in my purse with the microphone facing out. Then I got out of the car and walked into the building with my head high and my heart pounding. The doorman tried to stop me. Can I help you? I'm here to see Sienna Marsh, I said confidently. Unit 412. Is she expecting you? Yes, I lied smoothly. She told me to come up. He hesitated, but something in my demeanor made him step aside. Rich people are used to getting their way. I used that to my advantage. The elevator ride to the 4th floor felt like it took forever. My palms were sweating. My heart was racing, but I wasn't scared. I was ready. I found Unit 412 and knocked before I could second-guess myself. Footsteps approached. The door opened. And there she was, Sienna Marsh, even more beautiful in person than in photos. Long dark hair, perfect skin, wearing yoga pants and a tank top, casual and gorgeous in that way that made me feel every one of my 35 years. Yes, she said, looking at me with polite confusion. Hello, Sienna, I said calmly. My name is Elena Hartwell. I'm Marcus Hartwell's wife, and you're wearing my grandmother's necklace. I think we need to talk. Her face went white. The color literally drained from her skin. She grabbed the doorframe like she needed it to stay upright. What? She whispered. Can I come in? I asked. I promise I'm not here to make a scene. I just want to talk, and I want my jewelry back. She stared at me for a long moment, her eyes wide with shock. Then, slowly, she stepped aside and let me in. And that's when everything changed. Because what I learned in Sienna's apartment over the next hour would transform this from a divorce case into a police matter. And Marcus Hartwell's carefully constructed life was about to come crashing down around him in ways he never saw coming. All because he'd underestimated 2 women. Big mistake. Sienna's apartment was exactly what I expected. Modern, Instagram perfect, decorated in shades of white and blush pink with gold accents. Everything looked like it had been staged for a photo shoot. Fresh flowers on the coffee table. Throw pillows arranged just so on the couch. Fairy lights strung artfully along one wall. It was the apartment of someone who lived their life for social media, where every corner was a potential backdrop. She closed the door behind me, and we stood there in her entryway, two women connected by one man's betrayal, neither of us quite knowing how to begin this conversation. Up close, I could see she was younger than I'd thought. Maybe 26 or 27. Her eyes were red-rimmed like she'd been crying recently, and around her neck, catching the afternoon light streaming through her windows, was my grandmother's sapphire necklace. Seeing it in person, on her body and her space, hit me harder than I expected. My vision actually blurred for a second. That necklace belonged in my safe. It belonged around my neck, or my future daughter's neck, or locked away safely until the next generation. It did not belong on this stranger, this girl who destroyed my marriage. "You're his wife," Sienna said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. She wasn't asking. She was confirming what she already knew from my introduction. "He told me he wasn't married." Of course he did. The oldest lie in the book. "I am his wife," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "We've been married for 12 years. We live together in a mansion in the hills. We attend charity events together. We're very much married." She sank onto her white couch like her legs had given out. Oh my God, I didn't know," he said. He told me he was divorced, that it was finalized last year, that he was single. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception, but all I saw was genuine shock and horror. She really hadn't known, or if she had suspected something, she'd believed his lies. "Can I sit?" I asked, gesturing to a chair across from her couch. She nodded mutely. I sat down, set my purse carefully beside me with the phone still recording, and looked at this girl who'd unwittingly been part of destroying my life. "How did you meet Marcus?" "At his company," she said, her hands twisting together in her lap. 9 months ago. I was struggling, barely making rent from modeling gigs and Instagram sponsorships. A friend told me Hartwell Developments was looking for a marketing consultant. I applied even though I didn't really have the experience. But Marcus, he interviewed me personally and said I had exactly the fresh perspective he needed. I bet he did. "He hired me on the spot," she continued. "Gave me a great salary, an office, a company car. I thought I'd finally caught a break, finally found someone who believed in me." Her voice cracked on those last words. "And then it became more than professional," I said. She nodded, tears starting to slide down her cheeks. "It started slow. He'd ask me to work late. We'd order dinner to the office. He'd tell me about his life, his dreams. He was so charming, so successful. And he paid attention to me like I mattered, like I was special." I knew that feeling. I'd fallen for the exact same routine 12 years ago. "When did the affair start?" I asked. "About 8 months ago. We were working late on a presentation. We'd had some wine, and he kissed me. I knew I shouldn't, he was my boss, but he said he'd been falling for me since the day we met, that he'd never felt this way before, that I was different." She laughed bitterly. "God, I'm so stupid." "You're not stupid," I said, surprising myself with the gentleness in my voice. "He's a professional liar. He's very good at making women feel special." She looked at me with grateful, tear-filled eyes. "After that night, we started seeing each other, but always in secret. He said it was because of workplace policies that we couldn't let people know the boss was dating an employee. I thought he was being professional, protecting my reputation." She shook her head. "I didn't know he was protecting his marriage." "The jewelry," I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "The pieces he gave you, where did he say they came from?" Her hand went unconsciously to the sapphire necklace. "He said he bought them for me, at auctions and estate sales. He knew I loved jewelry, that I posted about it on Instagram. He said each piece reminded him of me, that I deserved beautiful things." Fresh tears spilled over. "They weren't gifts, they were stolen." "Family heirlooms," I confirmed. "That necklace you're wearing? My grandmother wore it on her wedding day in 1952. My mother gave it to me on my wedding day. It's been passed down through 4 generations of women in my family. It's irreplaceable." Sienna's hands were shaking as she reached back to unclasp the necklace. Oh God, I'm so sorry, I didn't know, I swear I didn't know." She held it out to me with trembling hands. "Please take it back." I stood and walked over to her, taking the necklace carefully. The moment it touched my hands, I felt something inside me settle. One piece recovered. The weight of it, the familiar feel of the chain, the sapphire warm from her skin, it was like welcoming home a piece of my soul. "Thank you," I said quietly, sitting back down with the necklace clutched in my hand. "There are other pieces," Sienna said, standing up quickly. "He gave me earrings, bracelets, other necklaces. Are they all yours?" "Probably," I said. "Can I see them?" She disappeared into her bedroom and came back with a jewelry box. She set it on the coffee table between us and opened it. Inside, laid out on white velvet, were my treasures. My mother's Baroque pearls, the emerald and diamond Art Deco earrings, the ruby bracelet from the Italian Contessa, the diamond bracelet from the French Duchess, piece after piece that I'd thought I might never see again. My hands were shaking as I reached out to touch them. These are all mine, every single one. Some were gifts from Marcus during our marriage. Some were family pieces, all stolen from my personal safe. "I feel sick," Sienna said, and she actually did look green. "I've been posting these on Instagram, wearing stolen jewelry and bragging about gifts from a married man. Oh God, everyone's going to know. Everyone's going to think I'm a homewrecker." "Are you in love with him?" I asked suddenly. She looked at me, surprised by the question. I thought I was, but now I don't know. How can you love someone who's been lying to you about everything? He told me he was divorced. He told me we had a future together. He even talked about me meeting his family at Christmas." She laughed bitterly. "Was any of it real, or was I just convenient?" "I've been asking myself similar questions," I admitted. "After 12 years of marriage, I'm not sure I ever really knew him at all." We sat in silence for a moment, two women connected by betrayal, both processing the wreckage of our illusions. "Can I ask you something?" Sienna said finally. "Yes." "Why are you being nice to me? I slept with your husband. I wore your jewelry. You should hate me." I thought about that. A week ago, I would have hated you, but you didn't know he was married. You thought you were in a relationship with a single man. You're a victim here, too. He lied to you just like he lied to me. The difference is I have the resources to fight back. You don't. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I've filed for divorce," I said. "I'm taking him for everything he's worth, and I'm exposing the fraud he's been committing with his business, the fake job he created for you, the company funds he used to finance your relationship, all of it." Her eyes went wide. The marketing job was fake. "You have no marketing experience, no marketing degree, no previous marketing jobs. He hired you as a cover to pay you a salary and give you access to company resources. Everything you've been doing with him, all the travel, the dinners, the hotels, it's all been billed as business expenses. He's been stealing from his own company to fund your affair." "I'm going to lose my job," she said quietly. "When this comes out, I'm going to lose everything." "Probably," I admitted. "But Sienna, you need to protect yourself. Get a lawyer, a good one. Because when this scandal breaks, and it will break, Marcus is going to try to throw you under the bus. He's going to paint you as the seductress who manipulated him, the gold digger who took advantage. You need legal protection." She nodded slowly, processing. "Can I ask you one more thing?" "Sure." "The other pieces, the ones that aren't in this box, I don't have them all. Some of them Marcus took back a few weeks ago, said he needed to get them appraised for insurance or something. I didn't question it. Do you think he sold them?" Ice flooded my veins. "Which pieces did he take?" "The emerald earrings, the ones with the round emeralds and the gold setting, and a diamond ring, and I think one of the bracelets, the one with the rubies. Those were some of the most valuable pieces. The emerald earrings alone were worth over $50,000. The diamond ring, probably $30,000, if he'd sold them if they were gone." "Did he say anything else about them?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "No, just that he'd bring them back soon, but that was 3 weeks ago and I haven't seen them since." She paused. "Do you think he's selling your jewelry, like for money?" It didn't make sense. Marcus was wealthy. He didn't need to sell jewelry for cash, unless he was moving assets, converting valuable items into untraceable cash as part of his exit strategy. "I need to make a call," I said, pulling out my phone. I dialed Catherine, putting her on speaker with Sienna's nod of permission. "Elena," Catherine answered. "How's the confrontation going?" "Better than expected," I said. "Sienna didn't know Marcus was married. She's been cooperative. She's returning most of the jewelry. But Catherine, some pieces are missing. Marcus took them back from Sienna 3 weeks ago, claimed he was getting them appraised. I think he might be selling them." I heard Catherine's sharp intake of breath. "That's liquidating assets. That's exactly what we were afraid of. If he's converting jewelry to cash, he's preparing to hide more money. Elena, we need to move fast. We need to file an emergency motion to prevent him from selling or transferring any more assets." "Can we do that?" "We can try. It's tricky because technically they're community property, but if we can argue he's doing it to defraud you in the divorce, a judge might freeze everything. But we need evidence. Do you have any proof he took the pieces?" I looked at Sienna. "Do you have any texts or emails from Marcus about taking the jewelry?" She grabbed her phone, scrolling quickly. "Yes, here. He texted me 3 weeks ago. Need to borrow the emerald earrings and the diamond ring for appraisal. We'll return them soon." And I responded that it was fine. "That's perfect," Catherine said through the phone. "Sienna, this is Catherine Price, Elena's attorney. Would you be willing to provide that text exchange as evidence?" Sienna looked at me. I nodded encouragingly. "Yes," Sienna said. "I'll help however I can. This is so messed up. I feel like such an idiot." "You're not an idiot," Catherine said firmly. "You're a victim of a manipulative man. But right now, I need you to do something important. I need you to document everything. Every gift Marcus gave you, every company expense he told you to charge, every business trip you took together, every piece of communication you have with him. Can you do that?" "Yes," Sienna said. "I kept everything. Emails, texts, receipts. I'm organized like that." "Excellent. Send it all to Elena and she'll forward it to me. And Sienna, don't contact Marcus. Don't tell him you spoke with Elena. Don't give him any warning that we know about the missing jewelry. Can you do that?" "Yes," Sienna said again. "And ma'am, I'm sorry for all of this. I really didn't know." "I believe you," Catherine said. "Now let's use this situation to take him down. Elena, bring the recovered jewelry to my office tomorrow. We'll photograph it, document it, add it to our evidence. And we'll file that emergency motion first thing." She hung up in Sienna, and I sat there looking at each other. "I should hate you," I said again, "but I don't. I actually feel sorry for you." "I hate myself enough for both of us," Sienna said quietly. "I slept with a married man. Even if I didn't know it, that's what I did. And I helped him steal from you by accepting the jewelry. God, my parents are going to be so disappointed." "What are you going to do?" I asked. "About Marcus, about your job." She took a deep breath. "I'm going to quit. Today, I'm going to email my resignation and never go back to that office. I can't face him now. Can't pretend everything's fine. And honestly, I don't want his money anymore. It's all tainted. Everything he gave me was a lie." "That's brave," I said. "It's not brave, it's necessary." She started taking off other jewelry. A bracelet Marcus had given her that I didn't recognize, probably actually bought for her. Earrings, a ring. I don't want any of it. Any reminder of him makes me sick. I gathered up the jewelry box with my recovered pieces, holding it carefully like the treasure it was. "Thank you, Sienna, for being honest, for returning these. You didn't have to." "Yes, I did," she said. "It's the right thing to do, the only thing to do." She walked me to the door. "Can I ask what's going to happen to him, to Marcus?" "He's going to lose," I said simply. "His marriage, half his money, possibly his business if his investors pull out, his reputation, everything he values. He's going to learn that actions have consequences." She nodded. "Good, he deserves it." She paused. "And Elena, I hope you get everything you're owed, everything he took from you. You deserve justice." "So do you," I said. I left her apartment with the jewelry box clutched against my chest and my phone full of evidence. The drive home was surreal. I kept glancing at the box on my passenger seat, still not quite believing I had my grandmother's necklace back. My mother's pearls. These pieces of my history that I thought might be lost forever. When I got home, I went straight to my bedroom and carefully returned each piece to my safe. The sapphire necklace in its blue velvet box, the pearls in their silk pouch, each piece back where it belonged. The safe still wasn't full, there were still pieces missing, but it was better. So much better. Then I forwarded Catherine everything Sienna had sent. Texts from Marcus, emails about business trips, receipts from dinners and hotels, all charged to his corporate card. Photos of them together that she'd kept private, never posted. A complete documentation of their 8-month affair. Catherine called me, within minutes of receiving the files. "Alina, this is incredible. This is everything we need. With Sienna's cooperation, we can prove the affair, prove the misuse of company funds, prove he's been liquidating assets. I'm filing the emergency motion tonight. By tomorrow morning, Marcus won't be able to move a penny without court approval." "What about the missing jewelry?" I asked. "I'm going to recommend we file a police report. Theft. Even between spouses, taking items from a locked safe without permission and selling them is theft. The police might not pursue it aggressively. Domestic cases are always complicated, but the report creates a record, and it gives us leverage." "Do it," I said. "File the report. I want this on record." "I'll handle it tomorrow. For tonight, you should rest. You've had a huge day. You confronted your husband's mistress, recovered your jewelry, and gained a witness who's willing to testify to everything. That's a massive win." But I couldn't rest. I was too wired, too full of adrenaline. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine and went through all the evidence Sienna had sent, reading texts from Marcus that made my stomach turn. "Can't wait to see you tonight, beautiful. You make me feel alive. Being with you is the only time I'm truly happy. I'm falling for you more every day." The same words he'd used on me 12 years ago. The same lines, the same manipulation. He was so predictable it was almost pathetic. There were also texts that were more damning. "Charge the hotel to the company card under marketing expenses. Book the Miami trip as a business conference. We can write off dinner as a client meeting." Proof of fraud, black and white, undeniable. I was so absorbed in reading that I didn't hear Marcus come home. Didn't hear him climb the stairs. Didn't know he was there until my bedroom door flew open and he stood in the doorway, rage contorting his features. "What did you do?" he demanded. I closed my laptop calmly, not letting him see my racing heart. "You're going to need to be more specific. I've done a lot today." "Sienna," he spat. "She just resigned, via email, said she couldn't work for me anymore. What did you say to her?" So Sienna had followed through. Good for her. "I introduced myself," I said calmly. "Told her I was your wife, asked for my jewelry back. She was very cooperative once she learned you'd been lying to her about being divorced." His face went from red to purple. "You had no right to contact her, to interfere with my business, too." "To interfere with your mistress, you mean?" I interrupted. "Marcus, she's not your employee. She's your affair partner who you hired to give yourself access to her. That's sexual harassment, abuse of power. It's illegal." "You're destroying everything," he shouted. "My business, my reputation, my—" "Your affair," I finished. "Yes, I am, and it feels wonderful." He stepped into my room, and I stood up, refusing to be intimidated. "You're going to regret this," he said, his voice low and threatening. "You think you're so smart, hearing Catherine Price, filing for divorce, turning Sienna against me, but you have no idea what I'm capable of. I will destroy you in court. You'll walk away with nothing." "Get out of my room," I said quietly. "This is MY House. Get out or I'm calling the police and reporting you for threatening me." He stared at me with such hatred I almost didn't recognize him. Then he turned and slammed out of the room. I heard him downstairs, things crashing, his voice yelling profanities. Then his car starting, tires squealing as he left. I sat back down on my bed, shaking. That had been scary, really scary. I'd never seen him that angry, that out of control. I picked up my phone and texted Catherine. Marcus just threatened me, came into my room yelling, "I'm shaken." Her response was immediate. "Are you safe? Do you need me to call the police?" "I'm safe," he left, but it was bad. "Document everything. Write down exactly what he said, what he did, what time it happened. We may need a restraining order. Are you comfortable staying there tonight?" I looked around my room. This house suddenly felt unsafe, unwelcoming, not like home anymore. "No," I texted back. "I'm going to a hotel." "Smart, go somewhere nice. Charge it to your personal account. Stay there until we can figure out next steps. And Alina, this is escalating, be careful." I packed a bag quickly, grabbed the jewelry box from my safe, and left. I didn't know where Marcus had gone, but I wasn't waiting around to find out if he'd come back even angrier. I checked into a luxury hotel downtown, one of the ones Marcus and I had stayed at for charity events. The irony wasn't lost on me. The suite was beautiful, impersonal, safe. I ordered room service I didn't eat and took a bath that didn't relax me. Then I pulled out my laptop and did something I'd been considering since leaving Sienna's apartment. I started writing everything down, the whole story, from the beginning to now. Every betrayal, every lie, every piece of evidence, creating a timeline, a narrative, a record of exactly what Marcus Hartwell had done. I wrote until 3 a.m, until my eyes burned and my fingers ached. And when I was done, I had a 50-page document that told the complete story of my marriage, my betrayal, and my fight back. I sent it to Catherine with a note. "Our case, in narrative form, use whatever helps." Then I finally slept, in a hotel bed that wasn't mine, in a room that felt safer than my own home, while my marriage burned to the ground, and my husband's empire started to crumble. And when I woke up the next morning, everything changed again, because Catherine had filed the emergency motion and the police report, and Marcus Hartwell was about to discover that his world was officially imploding. The call came at 8 a.m. Catherine, her voice tight with controlled excitement. "Alina, are you sitting down?" "I'm still in bed," I said, sitting up quickly. "The police want to talk to you about the jewelry theft. They're taking it seriously." My heart started racing. What does that mean? It means a detective named Sarah Chen is assigned to the case. She specializes in domestic fraud and theft. She reviewed our report and wants to meet with you today to get your statement and see the recovered items. Alina, they're actually investigating this. That's good, right? That's very good. It means we have law enforcement on our side. It means Marcus isn't just facing divorce court, he's potentially facing criminal charges. Can you meet Detective Chen at my office at 11? Yes, I said. Absolutely yes. I got ready in a daze. Showered, dressed in a simple black dress and blazer, did my makeup, packed up the jewelry box carefully. By 10:30, I was at Catherine's office, sitting in a conference room, waiting. Detective Sarah Chen arrived at exactly 11. She was in her 40s, Asian American, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She shook my hand firmly and sat across from me with a recorder and a notepad. "Mrs. Hartwell, thank you for meeting with me. I've reviewed the police report your attorney filed. I'd like to hear the story in your own words. Start from the beginning." So I told her everything. Finding Marcus with Sienna, discovering the missing jewelry, confronting Sienna and recovering most of the pieces. The 3 items Marcus had taken back and likely sold. "Do you have proof that your husband accessed your safe without permission?" Detective Chen asked. "The safe is in my personal closet. The code is my mother's birthday. I gave it to him years ago, but the safe and its contents were always understood to be mine, my personal property. He had no right to take anything from it. And the items he took, they have significant value. The jewelry he gave to Sienna that I recovered is worth probably $300,000 total. The missing pieces, another $80,000 or so." Detective Chen's eyebrows rose. "That's grand theft territory. Can you provide documentation of ownership, receipts, appraisals, insurance records?" "Yes," I said. "I have insurance appraisals for all of the pieces from our homeowner's policy, and I have the recovered items here." I pushed the jewelry box across the table. She opened it and I watched her examine each piece carefully, taking photos, making notes. When she got to the sapphire necklace, she looked up at me. "You said this was your grandmother's." "4 generations," I confirmed. "Family heirloom, irreplaceable sentimental value beyond the monetary worth." She nodded, making more notes. "Mrs. Hartwell, I'm going to be honest with you. Cases between spouses are difficult. California law is murky on what constitutes theft within a marriage. However, the fact that these were kept in your personal safe, that many were family heirlooms, that he gave them to another woman, and that he may have sold some for cash, all of that works in your favor." "So you'll investigate?" I asked hopefully. "I will," she said. "I'm going to interview your husband. I'm going to try to locate the missing pieces, see if we can find records of sale. And depending on what I find, I may recommend charges to the DA. No promises, but I'm taking this seriously." "Thank you," I said, feeling emotion well up. "Thank you so much." After Detective Chen left, Catherine and I sat in her office reviewing everything. "The emergency motion was granted," she said. "As of this morning, Marcus cannot sell, transfer, or dispose of any assets without court approval. His bank accounts are frozen except for reasonable living expenses. He can't touch the investment properties, can't liquidate stocks, can't do anything. He's going to be furious." "He already is," I said, telling her about last night's confrontation. Her face went serious. "Alina, I'm filing for a restraining order. Today, his behavior is escalating and I don't want you in danger." "Will a restraining order actually protect me?" I asked. "It's a piece of paper," she admitted. "But it means if he violates it, he goes to jail. And it sends a message to the court that he's volatile, aggressive, not to be trusted. It helps our case." "Do it," I said. "Already drafted," she said with a slight smile. "I'll file it this afternoon. In the meantime, stay at the hotel. Don't go to the house alone. Don't meet with Marcus without witnesses present. Protect yourself." I left her office feeling like I was in the middle of a tornado. Everything was happening so fast. Divorce papers, police investigations, restraining orders, asset freezes. A week ago, I was just a lonely wife in a failing marriage. Now I was at the center of a legal storm that was going to consume everything. My phone buzzed constantly. Marcus calling, texting, leaving voicemails that became progressively more unhinged. "You've destroyed everything. How dare you freeze my accounts? This is MY money. You're going to pay for this. I built this empire, and you're tearing it down out of spite." I didn't respond to any of it, just forwarded everything to Catherine, creating more evidence of his instability. Then, around 3 p.m., I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Hello? Mrs. Hartwell, this is Robert Morrison. I'm one of your husband's primary investors. I need to speak with you about some very disturbing information I've received." My stomach dropped. "What information?" "About misuse of company funds, about a fraudulent employee, about your pending divorce and asset freeze. Mrs. Hartwell, I have $20 million invested in Hartwell Developments, and I'm hearing rumors that make me very nervous about the security of that investment. Can we meet?" I told him I'd call him back and immediately called Catherine. "One of Marcus's investors wants to meet with me. What do I do?" "What's his name?" she asked. "Robert Morrison." "Oh, wow. He's the biggest investor, the one who funded Marcus's last 3 developments. Alina, this is good. If Morrison pulls his money, it could collapse the whole company. But you need to be careful. Don't tell him anything that could be used against you. But you can listen. You can let him know that Marcus has been fraudulent. Plant those seeds." "Should I meet with him?" "Yes, but somewhere public. And I'm coming with you. Where does he want to meet?" We arranged to meet Robert Morrison at a coffee shop the next morning. Catherine and I arrived early, took a table in the back, and waited. Morrison was in his 60s, silver-haired, wearing an expensive suit that screamed old money. He shook our hands and got right to business. "Mrs. Hartwell, Ms. Price, thank you for meeting me. I'll be direct. I've heard rumors about your husband's affair with an employee, about company funds being used inappropriately, about criminal investigations. I need to know if my investment is at risk." Catherine and I exchanged a look. How much should we tell him? "Mr. Morrison," Catherine said carefully, "I can't discuss the details of my client's divorce case, but I can tell you that we have evidence of significant financial impropriety involving Hartwell developments, misuse of company resources, fraudulent employment, potential embezzlement." Morrison's face went hard. "I knew it. I've been reviewing expense reports for the past month, ever since I heard whispers about an affair. There are charges that make no sense. Hotels in cities where we have no projects, dinners with no client names attached, a marketing consultant who produces no marketing materials." "Sienna Marsh," I said quietly. "Yes," he confirmed. "I looked into her background. She has no qualifications for the position she holds, and she's been paid $90,000 over 9 months for work I can't identify. That's my money. Money I invested in good faith, being used to fund your husband's affair." "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I'm pulling my investment," he said flatly. "All of it. I'm invoking the fraud clause in our partnership agreement and withdrawing my capital, and I'm encouraging the other investors to do the same. By the end of the week, Hartwell Developments will have no funding. Your husband will be ruined." It was exactly what I wanted. Marcus losing everything, his empire crumbling, facing the consequences of his actions. But hearing it stated so bluntly still took my breath away. "Mr. Morrison," Catherine said, "I appreciate you sharing this with us, and I think you're making the right decision to protect your investment. But I need to ask that you not mention this meeting to anyone, especially not to Marcus. We're in the middle of sensitive legal proceedings." "I understand," he said. "And Ms. Price, when this all comes out, when you're dividing assets in divorce court, remember that Hartwell Developments is going to be worthless. The company is built on investor capital that's all going to be withdrawn. There won't be anything left to split." He left, and I looked at Catherine with wide eyes. "Is that true? Will there be nothing left?" "The company itself may collapse," she admitted. "But Marcus has personal assets, the house, the investment properties he bought with marital funds, the offshore accounts, the cars, the art. He can't hide everything. We'll still get you what you're owed. But Alina, his business is going to be destroyed, completely destroyed." I should have felt triumphant. This was revenge on a scale I hadn't even imagined. But instead, I felt strangely empty. Marcus's empire, the thing he'd devoted his life to building, was about to be reduced to rubble, and I'd helped make it happen. "Do you feel bad?" Catherine asked, reading my expression. "I don't know what I feel," I admitted. "He did this to himself," she said firmly. "Every choice that led here was his, the affair, the theft, the fraud. You're just holding up a mirror and making him face the consequences. Don't feel guilty for demanding justice." She was right. I knew she was right, but it was still overwhelming. The next few days were a blur of legal proceedings and revelations. The restraining order was granted, meaning Marcus couldn't come within 100 yards of me. Detective Chen interviewed Marcus about the missing jewelry, and he apparently claimed he had every right to access marital property, confirming he'd taken the pieces but refusing to say what he'd done with them. The investors started pulling out, exactly as Morrison had predicted. By Friday, Hartwell Developments had lost over $40 million in funding. And then came the news that changed everything again. Detective Chen called me Friday afternoon. "Mrs. Hartwell, we found the jewelry, the pieces your husband took from Sienna." "Where?" I asked, my heart racing. "A high-end pawn shop downtown. Your husband sold them 3 weeks ago for $35,000 cash, far below their actual value, but pawn shops prey on people who need quick money. We've recovered the pieces and they're being held as evidence. Once the case is resolved, they'll be returned to you." "He really sold them," I said, still processing. "He stole my family's jewelry and sold it for cash." "Yes, ma'am. And that, combined with the other evidence, gives us enough for charges. The DA has agreed to prosecute. Mrs. Hartwell, your husband is being charged with grand theft and fraud. He'll be arrested Monday morning." The room spun. Arrested? Yes, ma'am. He'll be taken into custody, processed, and arraigned. He'll likely make bail, but he's going to have a criminal record. And depending on how the trial goes, he could face jail time. Jail time. Marcus in jail. The thought was surreal. "How much time?" I asked. "Grand theft can carry up to 3 years. The fraud charges another 5. If he's convicted on all counts, he's looking at significant prison time. Though first offenders often get reduced sentences or probation. We'll see." After she hung up, I just sat there in my hotel room, staring at nothing. Marcus was going to be arrested, criminally charged. His business was collapsing. His reputation was destroyed. His life was in ruins. All because he'd stolen my grandmother's necklace. All because he'd thought I didn't matter. I called Catherine and told her the news. "Monday's going to be quite a day," she said. "The arrest will be public record. The media will pick it up. Everyone's going to know. Alina, are you prepared for that? For this to become a public scandal?" "I don't care," I said, and I meant it. "Let everyone know. Let the world see what kind of man Marcus Hartwell really is." Monday morning, I was back in Catherine's office when the call came. Marcus had been arrested at his office, in front of his remaining employees, and taken away in handcuffs. The humiliation must have been crushing. By noon, it was all over the news. Real estate mogul Marcus Hartwell arrested for theft and fraud. Local businessman accused of stealing wife's jewelry for Mistress. Hartwell Developments collapses amid scandal. My phone exploded with calls from reporters, from friends, from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone wanted the story. Everyone wanted details. I ignored them all. Except one call, from Sienna. "Alina, it's Sienna. I just saw the news. Oh my God, he was arrested." "Yes," I said, "for stealing my jewelry and selling it, among other charges." "I feel like this is all my fault," she said, her voice thick with tears. "It's not," I said firmly. "Sienna, you were lied to and manipulated. The only person at fault here is Marcus. He made every one of these choices." "I know, but I keep thinking, if I hadn't accepted the jewelry, if I'd questioned things more, maybe none of this would have happened." "Or maybe he would have found someone else," I said. "Someone who wouldn't have been as cooperative as you were. Someone who wouldn't have returned my things. Sienna, you did the right thing in the end. That's what matters." "Thank you," she said quietly. "And Alina, I'm going to testify. If the DA needs me to testify about the jewelry, about the company expenses, about any of it, I will. I want to help." "That's brave," I said. "It's the least I can do." Over the next weeks, I watched Marcus's world continue to crumble. He made bail, but his passport was confiscated. His business was in receivership, being liquidated to pay back investors. His name was mud in the business community. Former friends and associates distanced themselves. He'd gone from powerful mogul to pariah in the span of 2 weeks. The divorce proceedings moved forward. With the criminal charges and the evidence of fraud, Marcus's lawyers advised him to settle. He fought it at first, insisted on going to trial, threatened to drag everything out for years. But Catherine was relentless. She filed motion after motion, presented evidence after evidence, built a case so overwhelming that even Marcus's expensive lawyers told him he couldn't win. Finally, 3 months after I'd first filed for divorce, we reached a settlement. I got the house. Half the value of the investment properties that hadn't been liquidated. Half of all bank accounts, including the offshore ones. My jewelry, all of it, including the pieces recovered from the pawn shop. And a cash payment of $12 million. Marcus got to keep his legal troubles, his ruined reputation, and the smoldering remains of his collapsed business empire. The criminal trial was set for 6 months out. The DA was confident they'd get a conviction. Marcus was looking at probation at minimum, possible jail time depending on the judge. And me, I was free, legally, financially, emotionally free. I stood in the house that was now officially mine, looking out those floor-to-ceiling windows at the city below. and I felt something I hadn't felt in over a decade. Peace. My phone buzzed, a text from Catherine. "Congratulations, Alina, you did it, you won." I texted back, "We did it, thank you for everything." Another text, this one from Sienna. "Saw the settlement news, I'm so happy for you, you deserved this." I smiled and responded, "Thank you, how are you doing?" "Better, got a new job, legit this time, in therapy, healing. Thank you for being kind to me when you had every right not to be." We were both his victims. "I'm glad you're moving forward." I walked through the house, room by room, seeing it with new eyes. This wasn't Marcus's mansion anymore. It was mine. My space to fill however I wanted. My fresh start. I went to my closet, opened the safe, and pulled out my grandmother's sapphire necklace. Put it on, feeling the familiar weight of it around my neck. Looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the invisible wife anymore. Wasn't the woman who'd accepted loneliness and betrayal as the price of luxury. She was someone new, someone stronger, someone who'd fought back and won. Someone who mattered. I thought about my grandmother, about my mother, about all the women who'd worn this necklace before me. They'd survived wars and losses and hardships. They'd endured. They'd persevered. And they'd passed their strength down to me. I'd needed that strength, and I'd found it when it mattered most. My phone rang again. Detective Chen. "Mrs. Hartwell, just wanted to let you know, we've closed our investigation. All the jewelry has been recovered and will be returned to you by the end of the week. And the DA is moving forward with the trial. It's looking very good for a conviction. Thank you, Detective, for taking this seriously, for helping me get justice." "That's my job," she said. "But between you and me, I'm glad we could help. Too many women in your situation don't fight back. They accept the betrayal and move on quietly. You didn't. You stood up for yourself. That matters." After she hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and went out to the pool deck. Sat in the evening air watching the sun set over Lowe's angels, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. I'd lost a lot, 12 years of my life, the man I thought I'd married, the future I'd imagined, but I'd gained something too, myself, my strength, my certainty that I could survive anything. And I'd learned something important, something I wished I'd known years ago. You teach people how to treat you. For 12 years, I'd accepted being invisible, being taken for granted, being treated as less important than Marcus's business, his ambitions, his desires. I'd taught him that my feelings didn't matter, that he could do whatever he wanted without consequences. Never again. Whatever came next, whatever new life I built from the ashes of this one, I would never again accept being invisible. Never again let someone convince me I didn't matter. Never again stay silent about betrayal and abuse. I was Alina Rodriguez Hartwell, daughter of immigrants, granddaughter of survivors, a woman who'd lost everything and fought to get it back. A woman who'd faced her husband's betrayal and didn't just survive it, but used it to reclaim her power. And that woman, she was just getting started. The sun dipped below the horizon and the city lights began to twinkle. Somewhere out there, Marcus was sitting in whatever apartment he could afford now, contemplating his ruined life. Somewhere out there, Sienna was rebuilding, learning, healing. And here I was in my house with my jewelry, with my freedom, with my future stretching out before me full of possibility. I raised my wine glass to the night sky, to my grandmother, to my mother, to all the women who'd survived and passed their strength down to me. "I did it," I whispered. "I survived, I won, and I'm never going to let anyone make me feel small again." The city lights sparkled like scattered diamonds, like promises, like new beginnings. And for the first time in 12 years, I couldn't wait to see what came next. Because whatever it would be on my terms. My life, my rules, my victory. Marcus Hartwell had thought he could steal my jewelry, my dignity, my life. He'd thought I was weak, powerless, insignificant. He'd learned the hard way just how wrong he was. And that, more than the money or the house or even the jewelry, was the sweetest victory of all. The end of my marriage, the beginning of everything else. The moment I remembered who I was and decided never to forget again. I touched the sapphire necklace around my neck, feeling the generations of strength it represented, and I smiled. Justice had been served, not just in court, but in my heart. And it felt absolutely perfect. 6 months had passed since the divorce was finalized. 6 months since I'd stood in that courtroom and watched Marcus sign away half his fortune, half his properties, and any claim he had to my life. 6 months since I'd walked out of there with my head high and my grandmother's necklace around my neck, a free woman for the first time in over a decade. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, like it had been holding its breath for years and could finally exhale. I'd had it completely redecorated, erasing every trace of Marcus's influence. The cold, modern aesthetic he'd loved was gone, replaced with warmth, color, life. I'd brought in a designer, a young woman named Maria who understood exactly what I wanted when I said, make it feel like a home, not a showroom. The master bedroom was now sage green and cream, with soft textures and natural light. I'd converted Marcus's office into a library, floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with books I'd always wanted to read but never had time for. His bedroom, the one he'd retreated to when our marriage started dying, was now a yoga and meditation studio with windows overlooking the garden. Every room told a new story. My story, not his. I was sitting in what I now called the morning room, a sun-filled space off the kitchen where I had my coffee every day, when my phone rang. Catherine's name flashed on the screen. "Good morning," I answered, smiling. Catherine and I had become friends through this ordeal. Real friends, the kind who got together for dinner and talked about things other than legal strategy. "Morning, Alina. I wanted to give you a heads up before you see it on the news." The verdict came in. My heart skipped. Marcus's trial had wrapped up last week after 3 months of proceedings. The DA had presented an overwhelming case. The theft charges, the fraud, the misuse of company funds. Sienna had testified, brave and composed, telling the jury exactly how Marcus had manipulated her. I'd testified too, describing the betrayal, the stolen jewelry, the systematic financial abuse. Marcus's lawyers had tried to paint me as a vindictive ex-wife out for revenge, tried to make it seem like a simple marital dispute blown out of proportion. But the evidence was too strong, the paper trail too clear, the witnesses too credible. "And," I asked, holding my breath. "Guilty on all counts," Catherine said, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. "Grand theft, fraud, embezzlement. The judge is going to sentence him next week, but Alina, he's looking at real prison time. The DA is recommending 4 years. 4 years. Marcus Hartwell, who'd built an empire, who'd walked through life like he owned it, was going to prison. The reality of it washed over me in waves. Relief, vindication, and surprisingly, a small thread of sadness for the man I'd once loved before I knew who he really was. "How do you feel?" Catherine asked. "Honestly, I don't know. It's what he deserves, what he earned through his choices. But it's still surreal, you know. The man I was married to for 12 years is going to prison." "The man you thought you were married to never existed," Catherine said gently. "That was a mask. The real Marcus is the one who stole from you, lied to you, and showed no remorse until he got caught. Try to remember that." She was right. I'd been mourning a ghost for months. Mourning the Marcus I'd thought I married, the one who'd pursued me with flowers and handwritten notes. But that man was an illusion. The real Marcus was the one who'd taken my grandmother's necklace and given it to his mistress without a second thought. "You're right," I said. "Thank you, Catherine, for everything. I couldn't have done this without you." "You're stronger than you think you are," she said. "You always were, you just needed to remember it. Now, how's the new business venture going?" I smiled, looking around my morning room at the sketches and designs scattered across my work table. "Really well, actually. I'm meeting with another potential client this afternoon. Word is getting out." After the divorce, I'd taken my jewelry appraisal business and expanded it into something bigger. I'd started a full consulting service specializing in heirloom jewelry. I helped people understand what they owned, get pieces appraised and authenticated, and most importantly, I helped women protect their valuable items in prenuptial agreements and estate planning. I'd become an advocate for women securing their assets, making sure they never ended up in the position I'd been in. The business was booming. Turns out there were a lot of wealthy women who'd heard about my story and wanted to make sure their own precious items were protected. I'd been featured in 3 magazines, had a waiting list of clients, had hired 2 employees to help me keep up with demand. I'd also started speaking at women's groups, at legal conferences, at charity events, sharing my story, not for sympathy but to educate, to empower, to show other women that they didn't have to accept betrayal silently, that they had rights, that they had power. The first time I gave a speech, I was terrified. Standing in front of 200 women at a luncheon, my hands shaking, my voice trembling. But then I looked out at their faces and saw recognition, understanding, women who'd been through similar situations, women who were currently going through it, women who needed to hear that they could survive. By the time I finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room, and the line of women who wanted to talk to me afterward, to share their stories, to ask for advice, went on for hours. That's when I knew I'd found my purpose, not just building a business, but helping women find their strength. After I hung up with Catherine, I sat for a moment processing the news of the verdict. Then I did something that had become a ritual. I went to my bedroom, opened my safe, and took out my grandmother's sapphire necklace. I held it carefully, feeling the weight of it, the history of it, the strength it represented. All the jewelry was back now. Every single piece that Marcus had stolen. The emerald earrings, the pearls, the ruby bracelet, the pieces from the pawn shop. Everything cleaned, reappraised, and secured. I'd updated my insurance policy, created detailed provenance documents for each piece, and made arrangements in my will for where each item would go. But more than that, I'd started wearing them again. For months after getting them back, I couldn't bear to put them on. They felt tainted by Marcus's touch, by his betrayal. But slowly, with the help of my therapist, I'd reclaimed them. Started wearing the pearls to dinner, the emerald earrings to events, the sapphire necklace on important days. Today felt like an important day. The day Marcus was convicted. The day justice was officially served. I fastened the sapphire necklace around my neck and looked at myself in the mirror. At 35, I looked different than I had 6 months ago. Healthier, happier. My eyes had light in them again. My smile was genuine. I'd lost the hollow, haunted look I'd worn for the final years of my marriage. I'd been working out, not to look good for anyone else, but because it made me feel strong. I'd been eating better, sleeping better, living better. I'd cut my hair, just to my shoulders, a fresh start. I'd updated my wardrobe, keeping the pieces I loved and donating the ones I'd only worn to please Marcus. I was discovering who Alina was outside of being Mrs. Hartwell, and I liked her. My phone buzzed with a text from Sienna. Just heard about the verdict. Are you okay? Sienna and I had maintained contact over the past months. Not quite friends, the situation was too complicated for that, but friendly. Allies who'd survived the same storm. She'd been brave during the trial, facing Marcus in court and telling her truth. I respected her for that. I texted back, I'm okay, how are you holding up? Relieved it's over, ready to move on, coffee soon. I'd like that. We'd met for coffee twice since the divorce was finalized. Awkward at first, 2 women connected by trauma trying to find common ground. But Sienna was genuinely trying to rebuild her life. She'd gotten a legitimate job in social media marketing for a nonprofit, was in therapy, had started dating someone new, carefully this time, with her eyes wide open. She told me during our last coffee that I'd changed her life. That confronting her that day, showing her the truth, had been the wake-up call she needed. She'd been drifting, accepting attention from powerful men, letting herself be taken care of instead of building her own strength. Now she was different, focused, independent, building a life based on her own merit. I'd told her she'd changed my life too, that her cooperation, her honesty, her willingness to testify had been crucial to my victory. We'd both been Marcus's victims, and we'd both survived him. There was power in that shared experience. My doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. I wasn't expecting anyone. I walked to the front door and checked the security camera Marcus had installed years ago. A camera I'd kept because safety mattered, but now I controlled the system. A delivery truck, the driver holding a large box. I opened the door. "Elena Hartwell," he asked. "Yes." "Delivery for you. Sign here, please." I signed and took the box, light but substantial. No return address, just my name and address in printed labels. I brought it inside, suddenly cautious. After everything with Marcus, unexpected deliveries made me nervous. I opened it carefully in the kitchen. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a beautiful leather journal. Expensive, hand-tooled, the kind of thing you'd buy from an artisan, and a note. I opened the note with shaking hands. "Elena, I heard about your speaking engagements, about the work you're doing to help other women. I wanted you to have this. A place to write your story, your whole story. Not for me, not for anyone else, but for you, and maybe someday for your daughter. So she knows where she came from, so she knows what strength looks like. With admiration and gratitude, Sienna." My eyes filled with tears, the thoughtfulness of it, the understanding that I needed to document this journey, not just legally but personally. I ran my hands over the leather journal, already imagining what I'd write. I spent the afternoon doing exactly that. Sitting in my morning room with coffee and that beautiful journal, I started writing. Not the clinical timeline I'd created for Catherine, not the victim statement I'd read in court, but my story. The real, messy, complicated truth of my marriage, my betrayal, my fight, and my victory. I wrote about meeting Marcus at 23, about falling in love with his attention, about the slow erosion of myself over 12 years, about the moment I saw my grandmother's necklace around Sienna's neck and felt my world shatter, about finding my strength, about fighting back, about winning. I wrote for hours, the words pouring out like they'd been waiting for permission. By the time the sun started setting, I'd filled 20 pages. My hand was cramping, but my heart felt lighter. Sienna was right. I needed to tell this story, for me, for my healing, and maybe someday for other women who needed to know they weren't alone. My phone rang, an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello." "Elena," Marcus's voice. I hadn't heard it in months, had blocked his number after the restraining order. He must have been calling from a different phone. "Please don't hang up." I should have ended the call immediately, but curiosity kept me on the line. "What do you want, Marcus?" "I heard you testified at the trial. I wasn't allowed to be there for that part." His voice sounded different, smaller, defeated. "I wanted to. I needed to tell you something before sentencing." "I'm listening." I kept my voice cold, neutral. "I'm sorry," he said it quietly. "For everything, for the affair, for taking your jewelry, for lying to you for so many years, for making you feel invisible. You deserved better. You always deserved better." I waited, wondering if there was more, if this was manipulation or genuine remorse. "I'm going to prison," he continued. "4 years, my lawyer says. Maybe 3 with good behavior. I'm going to lose everything. The business is gone. My reputation is destroyed. Most of my money went to you, to legal fees, to restitution. I'm going to be a felon, a cautionary tale. And you know what the worst part is?" "What?" I asked. "I did it to myself. Every single consequence I'm facing, I earned. You didn't destroy me, Elena. I destroyed myself. You just refused to go down with me." Silence stretched between us. I could hear him breathing, could imagine him wherever he was, contemplating his ruined life. "Why are you calling me?" I asked finally. "Because you deserved an apology, a real one. Not the bullshit I tried to sell during the divorce, not the defensive crap I told myself to justify my actions. A real acknowledgement that I hurt you, that I was wrong, that you were the best thing in my life and I threw you away for nothing." "Sienna wasn't nothing," I said. "She was a person, a young woman you manipulated and lied to." "You're right," he said. "I hurt her too. I've hurt everyone I touched, and I'm going to spend the next few years in a cell thinking about that." "Good," I said and meant it. "You should think about it. You should understand what you did, what you destroyed, not just my trust, but your entire life." "I know," he said quietly. "And Elena, For what it's worth, I'm glad you won. Glad you fought back. Glad you didn't let me make you small. You were always stronger than I gave you credit for. I was strong enough to survive you, I said. That's what matters. It is, he agreed. Goodbye, Alina, I hope you have a good life, a happy life. You deserve it. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there holding my phone, processing the conversation. Was it genuine remorse? Or a last manipulation? Did it even matter? I decided it didn't. Marcus's feelings, his regrets, his journey to understanding what he'd done, that was his problem now. Not mine. I'd gotten my apology, but I didn't need it to move forward. I'd already moved forward. Miles and miles forward to a place where Marcus couldn't touch me anymore. I blocked the number he'd called from and deleted the call from my history. Then I went back to writing in my journal, reclaiming my story. That evening, I had dinner with Catherine and 2 other women we'd both become friends with through this process. Jennifer, who was going through her own high-profile divorce from a cheating husband, and Patricia, a lawyer in Catherine's firm who specialized in asset protection for women. We met at a new restaurant downtown, one of those trendy places with small plates and creative cocktails. We laughed. We shared stories. We talked about our businesses, our lives, our plans. Not once did we talk about the men who'd hurt us. They didn't deserve the space in our conversation. I have news, Jennifer announced over dessert. The settlement came through today. I got the house in Malibu, half the investment portfolio, and full custody of the kids. He tried to fight it, but his mistress got pregnant, and suddenly he was very motivated to settle quickly. We raised our glasses in a toast. To Jennifer, Catherine said, another victory for our side. To justice, Patricia added. To strong women who refuse to be victims, I finished. We clinked glasses and drank, 4 women who'd been through hell and come out stronger. Looking around that table, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Belonging, sisterhood, the knowledge that I wasn't alone. After dinner, I drove home through the LA night, the city lights twinkling like scattered stars. I thought about where I'd been 6 months ago. Scared, angry, heartbroken, fighting for my life and my sanity. And where I was now, free, strong, building something meaningful. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt peaceful. Mine. I went inside and did my nightly routine, made tea, did some gentle yoga in my new studio, took a bath with lavender oil, simple rituals that helped me sleep. But before bed, I returned to the journal Sienna had sent. I turned to a fresh page and wrote about today, about the verdict, about Marcus's call, about dinner with my friends, about the life I was building from the ashes of my marriage. And then I wrote something else, a letter to my future self, to the Alina who would read this journal years from now. Dear future Alina, if you're reading this, I hope you're happy. I hope the pain of this divorce has faded into a distant memory. I hope you've forgiven yourself for the years you spent invisible, for the time it took you to find your strength. I hope you've forgiven Marcus too, not for his sake, but for yours. Carrying anger is exhausting, and you deserve peace. I hope you've found love again. Real love this time, with someone who sees you, values you, cherishes you the way you deserve. Or if you haven't found romantic love, I hope you've found love in friendship, in work, in the life you've built. I hope you wake up every morning grateful for another day instead of dreading the emptiness. I hope you're still running the business, still helping women protect themselves, still speaking and sharing your story. Your pain has purpose now. Don't ever forget that. I hope you're still wearing grandmother's necklace, that you've passed it down to your daughter or your niece or some young woman who needs to know what strength looks like. Those pieces aren't just jewelry anymore. They're symbols of survival, of victory, of women who refuse to be broken. Most importantly, I hope you never forget what you learned, that you matter, that your voice deserves to be heard, that you are strong enough to survive anything, that the right person will never make you feel invisible. You are Alina Rodriguez Hartwell, and you are enough. You always were. With love and pride. Your former self. I closed the journal and set it on my nightstand. Tomorrow I'd continue writing. I'd document more of the journey, but tonight I'd done enough. I turned off the light and lay in my bed, in my house, in my life that was finally completely mine. And for the first time in over a decade, I fell asleep with a smile on my face. Not because Marcus was going to prison, though there was justice in that. Not because I'd won money and property, though financial security mattered. But because I'd won something more valuable than any of that. I'd won myself back. The next morning, I woke early and went for a run through my neighborhood. Something I'd started doing months ago, reclaiming my body and my health. The morning air was crisp and clear, the city just waking up. I ran past mansions and estates, houses that looked perfect from the outside, wondering how many held the same secrets mine had. How many women were living my old life right now, feeling invisible, accepting betrayal as the price of comfort. When I got home, sweaty and energized, I made a decision. I was going to write a book, not just the journal for myself, but a real book, a guide for women going through divorce from wealthy, powerful men. Practical advice mixed with emotional support, legal strategies and therapist-recommended healing practices. Everything I'd learned, everything I wished I'd known, compiled into something that could help others. I called Catherine over breakfast. I want to write a book, I told her, about everything. The divorce, the legal battle, the recovery, a guide for other women. What do you think? I think it's brilliant, she said immediately. I think you'll help thousands of women. Millions, maybe. Your story is powerful, Alina. And the practical advice you could provide, the legal insights, the emotional journey, it could be transformative for people. Will you help me with the legal sections? Make sure I'm giving good advice. Absolutely, and Alina, I think you should use real names, your real story. Marcus is being convicted in public court anyway. Everything's already public record. Don't hide, don't protect him, tell the truth. The idea terrified and exhilarated me in equal measure. Going public with everything. Not just speaking to groups, but publishing a book with my name on it, Marcus's name in it, the whole messy story available for anyone to read. But why not? I'd already testified in court, already spoken publicly, already reclaimed my story. A book was just the next step. I'll do it, I said. I'm going to write it. Over the next 3 months, I did exactly that. I wrote in the mornings before client meetings. I wrote in the evenings after yoga. I wrote on weekends, losing myself in the process of transforming my pain into something useful. Catherine helped with legal sections. My therapist, Dr. Sarah Mitchell, contributed chapters on emotional healing. Sienna wrote a section from the perspective of the other woman, sharing how she'd been manipulated and what she'd learned. The book came together like pieces of a puzzle, each chapter revealing another aspect of the journey from betrayal to victory. Meanwhile, Marcus was sentenced. 4 years in federal prison, 3 with good behavior. The judge had been harsh, citing the abuse of power, the manipulation of Sienna as an employee, the systematic fraud. Marcus had stood there in his orange jumpsuit, so different from the powerful man in custom suits I'd married, and accepted his sentence without argument. I didn't attend the sentencing, didn't need to. That chapter of my life was closed. I was writing new ones. 6 months after the verdict, a year after filing for divorce, I attended a charity gala. The same children's hospital fundraiser where I'd met Catherine 3 years ago. But this time, I wasn't there as Marcus Hartwell's wife. I wasn't there to smile and play a role. I was there as Alina Hartwell, business owner, advocate, speaker. I'd bought a table and invited my team, my friends, women I'd helped through their own divorces. I wore a midnight blue gown that made me feel powerful and beautiful, and around my neck, I wore my grandmother's sapphire necklace. Multiple people commented on it throughout the evening. "That's stunning," one woman said. "Is it vintage?" "Family heirloom," I replied with a smile. 4 generations, it's my most precious possession. "You're Alina Hartwell, aren't you?" another woman asked. "I read about your case. You're the one who took down Marcus Hartwell." "I'm the one who refused to be destroyed by him," I corrected gently. "There's a difference." "I'm going through a divorce right now," she said quietly. "My husband, he's been hiding money. I don't know what to do." I handed her my business card. "Call me. I can help. Or if I can't, I know people who can. You don't have to go through this alone. She took the card with tears in her eyes. Thank you. This happened 3 more times that night. Women approaching me, sharing their stories, asking for help. Each time I gave them my card, my encouragement, my assurance that they could survive this. By the end of the evening, I'd handed out a dozen business cards and had 2 women ask about hearing me for consultations. As I drove home that night, I thought about the full circle of it. 3 years ago, I'd been at this same event, standing next to Marcus, feeling invisible and lonely. I'd met Catherine and taken her card, not knowing I'd need it, not knowing my marriage was already dying. Now I was the one giving out cards, the one offering help, the one who'd survived and was using that survival to help others. The book was published 9 months later. Invisible No More, A Woman's Guide to Surviving Divorce from a Powerful Man. I'd agonized over the title, worried it was too dramatic, but Catherine convinced me it was perfect. You were invisible in your marriage, she said, and now you're not, that's the whole point. The book launch was at a bookstore in downtown LA. I'd expected maybe 20 people to show up. Friends, family, people who felt obligated to support me. Over 200 women came. The line wrapped around the block. Women of all ages, all backgrounds, all carrying similar stories of betrayal and survival. Some were currently going through divorces. Some were years past it. Some were still married but felt invisible and wanted to know they weren't alone. I signed books for 3 hours, listening to story after story. A woman whose husband had gambled away their retirement. A woman whose husband had hidden a second family. A woman whose husband had systematically isolated her from friends and family. A woman whose husband had stolen her inheritance. Each story was different. Each story was the same. Men using power to control, to manipulate, to abuse. Women finding the strength to fight back. You saved my life, one woman told me, tears streaming down her face. I was about to give up, accept a settlement that would leave me with nothing. But I read your book and I found the courage to fight. I hired a lawyer like Catherine, and I won. You saved yourself, I told her, holding her hands. I just showed you it was possible. You did the hard work. The book became a bestseller. Not blockbuster numbers, but steady sales that indicated it was reaching the women who needed it. I started getting invitations to speak at conferences, on podcasts, at events. My little consulting business exploded, more clients than I could handle even with my expanded team. And through it all, I healed, slowly, steadily, day by day. The pain of Marcus's betrayal faded to a dull ache, then to a scar, then to just a part of my story. Not the defining part, just one chapter in a much larger book. I started dating again, carefully. Nothing serious at first, just dinners and movies and remembering what it felt like to be seen, to be valued, to laugh with someone who actually listened when I talked. Then I met David, at a charity event, ironically. He was a nonprofit director, passionate about education reform, with kind eyes and a genuine smile. He asked me to dinner and I almost said no, still gun-shy from Marcus, but something about him felt safe, honest. Our first date lasted 6 hours. We talked about everything. His work, mine, our pasts. He'd been divorced too, knew the pain of a failed marriage. But unlike Marcus, David had done the work to understand his role in that failure, to grow from it, to become better. He asked about my book, and I watched carefully to see if my success intimidated him. It didn't. He was proud of me, excited for me, asked intelligent questions about the process and the response. Treated me like an equal, not a trophy or a threat. After dinner, walking me to my car, he said something that made my heart skip. I had a wonderful time tonight. You're brilliant and accomplished and fascinating, and I'd love to see you again if you're interested. No pressure. I know you've been through a lot, but I think you're amazing and I'd like to get to know you better. No games, no manipulation, just honest interest and respect for my autonomy. I'd like that, I said. We'd been dating for 3 months now, taking it slow, building a foundation of friendship and trust before jumping into anything serious. He'd been to my house, met my friends, supported me at a speaking engagement. I'd met his teenage daughter, who was smart and funny and nothing like the stepmother situation I'd feared. It was different from Marcus. Calmer, more stable, less intoxicating but more real. David didn't make me feel like the most special person in the world. He made me feel like a valued partner, an equal, someone whose opinions mattered and whose boundaries were respected. I didn't know if it would last. Didn't know if this would be my second chance at love or just a healthy relationship that ran its course. But I knew one thing for certain. I would never again accept being invisible. Never again stay in a relationship where I felt less than valued. The old Alina might have clung to David out of fear of being alone. The new Alina knew she'd rather be alone than diminished. Now, standing in my beautiful home on a Sunday morning, making coffee in my sunny kitchen, I thought about how far I'd come. From the broken woman crying on her closet floor to the successful business owner and author who was building a life she loved. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Saw your interview on the morning show. So proud of you, Mija. Your grandmother would be proud too." I smiled and texted back a heart emoji. My relationship with my parents had deepened through this process. They'd been horrified by what Marcus had done, guilty that they'd been so happy about the marriage, worried about how I'd survive. But they'd watched me not just survive but thrive, and it had brought us closer. My mother had started wearing her own jewelry again too. Pieces she'd put away after giving me the pearls, feeling like they belonged to the younger generation now. But seeing me reclaim mine had inspired her. We'd had lunch last week, and she'd worn these gorgeous Art Deco earrings I'd never seen before. "From my mother," she'd said, touching them. "I'd forgotten how beautiful they were, how powerful they made me feel. Thank you for reminding me." Another text came in, from Sienna. "Coffee this week. I have exciting news." We'd become genuine friends over the past year. The awkwardness had faded, replaced by mutual respect and affection. She was thriving now, engaged to a wonderful man who treated her well, promoted at her job, building her own life on her own terms. I texted back, "Wednesday at 10, our usual place." "Perfect, can't wait to tell you." I poured my coffee and went out to the pool deck, settling into my favorite chair with a view of the city. My city now, not Marcus's. The sun was bright, the air was warm, and I had a client meeting this afternoon with a woman who needed help protecting her family's heirloom jewelry collection before her wedding. I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing work that mattered, helping women who needed it, building a life based on my values, my strength, my choices. My grandmother's necklace sat in the safe upstairs, waiting for the next special occasion when I'd wear it. But its power wasn't in the wearing anymore. Its power was in what it represented. Generations of strong women who survived impossible things, who endured, who passed their strength down through the years until it reached me exactly when I needed it most. I'd survived Marcus Hartwell. I'd survived betrayal and theft and the dissolution of everything I thought my life was. And I'd done more than survive. I'd thrived. I'd transformed my pain into purpose. I'd helped other women find their strength. I'd written a book that was changing lives. I'd built a business that mattered. I'd found the courage to love again, carefully and wisely. The woman who'd stood in that mall food court seeing her necklace around a stranger's neck barely existed anymore. She'd been transformed by fire, refined by struggle, reborn as someone stronger. Someone who knew her worth. Someone who would never again accept being invisible. As I sat there in the morning sun, coffee in hand, life stretching out before me full of possibility, I felt something profound. Gratitude. Not for the betrayal itself, I'd never be grateful for that, but for what it had revealed, for the strength it had forced me to find, for the life it had pushed me to build, for the woman it had required me to become. Marcus had tried to destroy me. Instead, he'd freed me. And that freedom, that power, that absolute certainty in my own worth, that was the real victory. That was justice. That was revenge better than anything I could have planned. Because while Marcus sat in a prison cell contemplating his ruined life, I was out here living my best one. And every morning I woke up happy, every client I helped, every speech I gave, Every word I wrote, every moment I spent being seen and valued and respected was proof that he'd failed. He'd tried to make me invisible. Instead, I'd become unforgettable. And I would spend the rest of my life making sure other women knew they could do the same. The sun climbed higher in the sky. My coffee grew cold, and I sat there smiling, planning my week, my month, my future. A future that was entirely, completely, beautifully mine. Invisible no more. Never again. The end. Moral reflection, asterisk. If you're watching this from somewhere in the world where you feel invisible, where someone is making you feel small, where betrayal has shattered your trust, please hear this. You are stronger than you know. Your voice matters. Your worth isn't determined by how someone else treats you. And you have every right to fight for what's yours, your dignity, your legacy, your life. Betrayal reveals character. Not yours, theirs. What you do after betrayal, that reveals your strength. Stand up, speak up, fight back. And remember, the best revenge isn't destroying them. It's building a life so beautiful, so powerful, so authentically yours that their betrayal becomes the catalyst for your transformation instead of your destruction. You matter. You always did. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Now go out there and reclaim what's yours.